Good evening. We would like to welcome everyone to the Brunswick City Commission regularly scheduled commission meeting for Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. We will now stand for an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. We can all bow our heads. Father God, we thank you for these moments that we get to come together to bask in each other's wisdom, to learn from one another, to learn how we can do the best for all of those who call this community home. Bless every person in this room as we are all leaders, to give ourselves, give our life, and give our service to serving others. We ask that you anoint us with that blessing. In your son Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Or against whatever.
If I could, please, we're going to pause just for 1 second before we go into approval of agenda. We'll now move on to approval of agenda. Any addendums or retractions or deferments?
I'd like to make the motion that we defer item number 3 with the consideration approval for rezoning for 50 Faith Avenue Conservation Preservation.
Hearing a first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion is passed. We realize that we have people here to speak to that project. We may have some people here to speak to offer another opinion on that project. Because we have handled this for 2 weeks now, and we continue to ensure that all zoning ordinances go through not only proper procedure, but ensure that those contiguous communities who are affected are directly heard from. The same as we do in zoning is the same that we would do with alcohol licensing and the such. I do want to give a small modicum of time for those who have come to speak either for or against, knowing that this doesn't end that time to speak for or against. But it does recognize that you all are here and have made the trek to speak at the meeting. So with that, I will open the floor briefly for anyone who wants to speak directly to item number 3, which is the property on 50 Faith Avenue. Yes, sir. Mr. Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Devin Hartman on behalf of Adam and Jenny Wainwright. And we're going to withdraw our petition for the rezoning. And Adam and Jenny will not stop trying to do good for the community. They will not do it at this location.
Okay.
And so there's no need to defer. There's no need to have further discussion unless you just want to have it, but
No,
they'll keep doing right by their community.
thank you, Mr. Harvey. Any additional comment?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of this. Realize the fact that you have decided to defer. I really appreciate that point. Also appreciate this commission doing due diligence and asking NPAs to get involved. That's really something that I wish my commission would have done so. Oh, by the way, I'm Cornell Harvey, I'm the former mayor of Brunswick. In light of the previous speaker and speaking that the said individual has decided to withdraw his petition for the zoning of this property. I do speak in opposition of zoning it to rezoning it. Basically, because of the fact that it's like spot zoning, and also that area is beginning to try to redevelop itself, and to rezone it, conservation preservation really goes in the face of someone trying to, or this whole community trying to get itself together. So therefore, on that aspect, I do go against that. But I would like to make one point clear, and that is Greater Works Ministries has no desire for that property either. Greater Works Ministry has started to look elsewhere, to look on the northern end, and also on the west side for this development. So therefore, Greater Works would like to have no dealing with that property whatsoever. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That to me changes things.
I would like to just say that we did reach out to the NPAs a couple of weeks ago and emailed and asked when and where we could meet to discuss it. So we were certainly open to that dialogue, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do to encourage that conversation. I just, for the record, we did reach out our hand and said, let us come talk to you about the project. And we got no response from the NPAs. So while theoretically that's a good idea, it involves a two-way conversation. Thank you.
I have one quick question, and hopefully you can answer this, but as far as the purpose and the use of the property, if Five Oaks Farms were to purchase it, move forward and purchase it, were there plans or would there be plans to have any livestock, whether four-legged or two-legged? It would just purely be growing and a true.
Right, and I believe the city statute prohibits that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Although, right, that's
Okay.
correct. It was blueberries, lettuce, and tomatoes
Okay.
involving school children.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Any additional questions, concerns, comments? Mr. King.
Yeah, my name is Cedric King, and I'm here to pretty much oppose the changing of the zoning ordinance for that piece of property. I think we all, in all of the organizations that we sit on and that we talk about and we discuss when it comes to community development, we have other needs. And so for us to do spot zoning, I think would be detrimental to this community. I think, we have needs for housing, other type of commercial development opportunities, and to move back with a rural zoning to allow for agricultural use is a move in the wrong direction. So we do thank the organization for withdrawing their request for the rezone, but I want to just put it on record that I'm in opposition of it. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any additional comment or question? Hearing none, what we will do is, because we don't have power at this very moment just to say something is withdrawn, is that we do have a motion. It's been seconded, it's been voted on. that it will be deferred. If that deferment is to ever come back, we will set a date for it. If it is not, and Five Oaks Farms decides to do something else with the property, work inside the current zoning, or not follow through, or not develop it in the way that maybe we're talking about here tonight, that's perfectly fine. But what we want to do is ensure that we keep all lines of communication open throughout this process, and be very honest about what the commission has done. So the commission until this point has just deferred it until we receive some absolute conversation that it has absolutely been withdrawn. Other than that, we will continue to work with MPAs to talk to both sides of this issue. So thank you so much. With that, we will move forward to the adoption of the full October 19, 2022 regular meeting agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Hearing a first, do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We will now move on to recognition, presentations, and awards. A proclamation presentation to Goodwill Southeast Georgia Director of Marketing and Communications, Hillary Bradley, recognizing the month of October as National Disability Employment Awareness Month. You can come to the front. How are you all? I don't know what works here. Does that work? I'm not sure. Okay. Well, number one, I want to say the amazing act and what you all do for our community is something that can't be really quantified in numbers, it can't be quantified in time, it can't be quantified in proclamation. You ensure that you work with those in our community who need a helping hand, and you find a way to give that helping hand, but also strengthen and build them towards a better life for themselves. So we want to say thank you for that, and thank you for the time and commitment that you put into your service. With that, we'll read this. Whereas October 2022 marks the 77th anniversary of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, which highlights workplaces welcoming of the talents of all people, including people with disabilities, a critical part of our efforts to build an inclusive community and strong economy. And whereas the U.S. Department of Labor Services and Disability Employment Policy has designated October as a month to raise awareness about disability employment issues and celebrate as many and varied contributions of American workers with disability. And whereas Goodwill Southeast Georgia recognizes National Disability Employment Awareness Month this October by celebrating more than 100 associates employed at its federal contract site, including the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia. Now, therefore, I, Cosby H. Johnson, Mayor of the City of Brunswick, along with my fellow commissioners, hereby recognize and commemorate the 77th anniversary and proclaim the month of October 2022 National Disability Employment Awareness. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. That's all I want to do. Wonderful. With that, we will move on to item number 4, updates. Zach Puckett, Project Manager, Pond and Company, to provide update on Lanier Gloucester intersection improvement, intersection design update.
Yeah. I think you probably, most of you are aware of this project that Lanier and Gloucester there. Give you a short history on it. We had a study done in that area back in 2020. When I started in 2019, Pond Company was set or hired to do that study. Did that in the batch. They did that study. That intersection got to reduce some congestion. The accidents there at the intersection. Couple of recommendations came from that study, one being an additional turn lane from Brunswick onto northbound Highway 17 and some other improvements there at the Lanier intersection. We've sent that was a study, study on the back street. We've sent our pond to further enhance that design, push it through the DOT permitting process and prepare the construction documents so that could be built, constructed. So tonight, we just want to bring Pond and Company in, they're going to join us online and kind of walk through that design, maybe just update you on where we are with the intersection, kind of where the basis of the design, and where that product is in. So we've got Zach Puckett, who's the project manager with Pond online, and he'll be walking through that design with you. So I'll turn it over to Zach. He's online.
Thanks, Garo. I'll be honest, I can't hear y'all too well. Y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, perfect. I can hear that. Awesome. Well, thank y'all. We appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight and speak to the commission and to the audience here. So what I'm going to do is start sharing my screen. We'll go through, I've got myself, Zach Puckett. I'm with Pond. We're the consultant design engineer for this particular project. I've also got Patrick McCardle on the line. He is the traffic engineer for this particular project. I'm the overall project manager and will be involved with the traffic signal design as well. So let me go ahead and start sharing here. Okay, y'all see me okay here? Can y'all see my screen?
No. There we go.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Can y'all see the design plans?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All righty. So what we'll do, we'll just kind of walk through, give you a general introduction of the project. Gary, I know, like I said, I heard you cover, I heard Pond, I heard left turn lane, and I heard Zach turnover. So just bear with me here if Garo already covered some of this stuff. But what this project consists of is, let me pull up aerial view here as well. This particular, can y'all see Google Earth okay as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this particular project covers State Route 25 connector, Gloucester Street. It starts at Goodyear Avenue and terminates at Glen Avenue. This particular project, we worked with the city of Brunswick a couple of years back, really prior to COVID, to work through on an initial traffic study with the BATS MPO, work through to identify, several improvements needed at various intersections along the corridor. First and foremost, really being the Glen Avenue functionality there. From there, we were going into, that was conceptual plans at the time. We ended up going into full engineering. So as we were scoping that, one of the first items we were tasked to look at was a traffic study, not only for the actual corridor itself, but also for a mid-block crossing that the city would like to propose right here near the Brunswick Aquatic Center and overall park. So what I would like to do first, like I said, that's kind of a brief overview. The project really consists of resurfacing and some intersection improvements, fairly minor for the most part, along with some widening. So what I would like to do before we actually go through the overall design that we'll talk through here shortly is have Patrick McCardle, like I said, he was responsible for the traffic analysis on this particular project, and he can give us an overall more detailed view of existing conditions, no build conditions, and then the overall expected level of service in that build year. So Patrick, I'm going to go ahead and share this for the traffic analysis overview, if you don't mind just hopping in there. Patrick, can you hear me? I think you're on mute.
can't see the screen right now, but I'll just pull it up over here. So in the existing conditions, all of the intersections on the corridor are operating at an acceptable level, with the exception of the Lanier Boulevard West Goodyear Avenue intersection. Is operating at a level of service F at about 60 seconds of delay. That's a failing level of service, but all things considered, it's really not terrible for an unsignalized minor street stop controlled location on a state highway. But as you get into the future and start looking at the no build conditions, the level of service starts to decrease. At the signalized location, it's still operating at a D, but the delay has increased a lot from existing conditions due to that traffic growth we're forecasting. And at the unsignalized intersections, particularly at Lanier Boulevard and Macon Avenue, you start to see a noticeable increase in delay, particularly by the AM peak hour of 2047. It starts to operate with a very, very high delay. So that intersection is problematic. After the improvements we're recommending, there's a very large drop in delay at the signal, about a 20-second drop in delay in the PM peak hour of the design year of 2047. There are still some of these unsignalized intersections that are failing, but the delay has been reduced significantly. Those delays are really something you just will see with these unsignalized full access minor street stop locations along these state highways as volumes get higher. There just aren't that many gaps on the road. And obviously, signals and roundabouts weren't really options at these locations. But the delay is reduced significantly by these improvements.
Awesome. So now what we'll do, I'm going to walk through the overall. I know that was kind of a quick overview with the traffic, but I just wanted to kind of spell through, what type of delays we're experiencing currently today if we did nothing, and then if we were to introduce those improvements. So what I'm going to do here, I've got several pages to the set, but I'm going to really focus for tonight's presentation really just on the signing and marking plans. I think it'll help everyone understand this most appropriately, given that it shows all the geometry and then all the signage and all that good stuff. So basically, Goodyear Avenue, we're not making any improvements there. The scope of this project, again, was just to look at overall resurfacing. Initially, GDOT was they've got two projects going on here. We have one project that's going to be resurfacing from the far west side of Gloucester all the way to Goodyear. I guess really all the way to Glen Avenue. And then we're going to come back in there and do a resurfacing portion along with a slight realignment portion with some widening as well. And then there's another project going on, excuse me, at Glen Avenue, where they're going to come in there and resurface that as well and actually do some of these intersection improvements. So for purposes of this, the first two real intersections we had looked at was Lanier Boulevard. Those are broke out into the east and west legs. So for purposes of this presentation, again, west leg here, east leg here. When we had first started looking at this, that initial report we had done early on, the GDOT project was actually going to have this as a road diet type project where we're actually tapering down to, if I'm not mistaken, I think 2-3 lane section to where we're actually going to have some raised islands for a mid-block crossing. We were going to have some turn bays and all of that good stuff. Unfortunately, that one ended up getting canceled. And this one obviously, improves capacity or keeps capacity at its current condition. So that's one benefit, of course, with this particular project. But as we started looking at these east and west legs, we wanted to, consider different alternatives. Unfortunately, again, one of the alternatives that we would have considered here would have been an R-cut configuration, especially here, just to basically restrict lefts and such out of here. Again, that's not really in the scope of this project. So I just want to preface, we're kind of working within a confined scope and looking for the best intersection improvements, needed for this corridor. So what we have settled with here is Lanier Boulevard west leg today is actually a two-way street. Due to the, pretty high demand, especially of that left turn, issues with, crash history that was coming out of this Lanier Boulevard East, we're actually converting this just to be a one-way and move all of the lefts and some additional rights over to that leg. What that's going to do is basically reduce one of these conflict points, right? Before, these folks were already making this left off of the west leg as they were the east leg. What could happen is, someone end up taking a left out of here as someone else is trying to slow to come into here, vice versa. So we're going to end up forcing all of those vehicles over to that west leg. You can see that we've got additional signage and stuff to, for that conversion, some one-way signs, do not enter signs, and others. What we have also done is actually bulb this out. So if you can see kind of screen back in a dashed line style, this is the existing radius return there. So what we're looking at doing is actually bulbing this out. It's coming in a little better alignment than it was, but that's not being improved too much because honestly, it really doesn't need to be here just to kind of keep that appropriate spacing from the east leg. However, in doing that, you can see where we're actually tying in this sidewalk to jog up near the back of curb to maintain a 2-foot minimum grass strip and actually have, just a sod or landscaped area, whatever the city might choose. As of now, we're just doing sod. So just a grassed area. But what that actually improves is the overall sight distance. So currently, this stop bar is located pretty far back from the intersection. With us doing this and actually jogging this sidewalk in towards Gloucester Street, that allows us to actually pull that stop bar a little further up. If you look out there in street view, there's actually one of the residents here actually has a chamfered fence currently to where, basically it allows required sight distance length so that they can actually see over their shoulder when pulling out there. So I think all in all, we're improving by, I believe it was like 8 feet or so, 8 to 10 feet. So that'll definitely help out the scenario there. Here you can see the existing sidewalk again shown dashed. That's going to go away. The sidewalk's again going to be pushed in a little further towards Gloucester Street. And that's really just to kind of improve, that setback distance and overall visibility for those vehicles, looking to turn left especially, but also right out of the west leg of Gloucester Street. Looking over at the east leg, what we're looking at doing there is a right out only configuration. We had tried our hardest really to squeeze in any kind of island, unfortunately, without making major improvements to the curb lines and widening that out a little bit. We're just not able to do that. So a lot of this is going to be done with striping. As you can see here, that is shown right turn only for the exit lane. But that is, I want to be sure everyone's aware, is still going to allow lefts in here. So basically, instead of turning onto this, this acute turn here for lefts, all lefts will be forced here. All lefts off of Lanier will be forced out here. And then right turns are still allowed at both places. If I go on to sheet 3, forgive me, I'm going to skip over one sheet here. This is the bottom leg of that intersection. One of the major items that's being noticed today is a pretty large queuing with that northbound lane here. So that northbound right is a pretty heavy movement. So with this scenario, we're going to have this as, again, a right turn lane. This is a right turn. One recommendation was to put do not block the box signage and pavement markings, which is what we've done here. This is a sign configuration that y'all might or might not be familiar with down there. We use it a good bit up in the metro Atlanta area. A lot of our clients around here have been very pleased with it because it not only gives the language of don't block the intersection, but also the visual representation that matches the striping that's in the field. So that's what we're looking at right here. The island that's there today, that pork chop island, will remain. There's going to be a little bit of, I don't even want to use the term widening, but it is going to change curb lines just a little bit. You can see some here, just to basically allow if someone wants to make that U-turn for any reason, just to better assist with that overall control. And going back, this is the sheet that I skipped. So this is going just north, just east of Lanier, going towards Glen Avenue. So right here, you can see basically we have a line. This is where really the transition, the overall super elevation starts to change. Not going to be anything much noticeable. We just wanted to ensure that the double yellow stays within the actual crown of the roadway. Currently, you know, that super elevation actually goes right through here to where when this eastbound vehicle wanting to make this eastbound left eventually, when they travel through, they would actually be, you know, a set of tires on one side of the roadway crown, a set of tires on the other. We just slightly shifted that just to make sure that it's, you know, a pleasurable experience. And it's such low speeds anyway that we're not too concerned with speeds. But that way, you know, the roadway center line, you know, still meets the true roadway crown. What we're looking at as far as intersection control at Macon Avenue, there's no real changes there. All we're looking at doing is pulling that sidewalk up a little bit here. I'm sorry, pulling this towards the intersection a little bit here. Again, just to pull that stop bar up a little bit for folks that might want to make this southbound left onto Gloucester, just to make sure they have adequate visibility. And then here, we're actually looking at jogging that sidewalk a little closer to the intersection, just to keep that crosswalk from being too far skewed. We really like for pedestrians to cross the road as perpendicular with that roadway as possible. And that's exactly what we're doing in this scenario, as well as you saw at Lanier. Going to the Glen Avenue, kind of little bypass lane. So as y'all probably know, this particular one here is the one that goes by the gas station today, right? It's currently one way here. However, it does have full access here today. There, you know, it allows left turns in, left turns out, as well as right turns out. What we are proposing to do, just to prevent any bottleneck scenario, especially having this split here, as well as these lanes that I'll talk a little bit on in a minute that are actually going to dual left turn lanes. We are looking to make this a right turn out only configuration. So that's shown here. Basically, you'll still be able to come out of the gas station and make this right out here. Going to the Glen Avenue intersection, this particular one, it looks like we don't have these arrows shown here, but this is one that was included under our project. However, it is getting completed under, I'm going to call it phase one of this Glen Avenue resurfacing project. So what they're going to do there is actually, let me toggle back to this view. Sorry for going back and forth. We're actually going to convert this receiving lane to a left turn lane, and then this through lane, through/left turn lane to allow dual lefts. So dual eastbound lefts at this intersection. In turn, having to do that, we're going to have to widen out for the receiving through lane here for that westbound movement. So that's what we have shown here. This is that existing island that I just kind of toggled on the Google Earth view. What we are looking at doing is widening that out to allow for that, you know, of course, the westbound receiving lane, because we're now converting these two to left turn lanes. We're going to assign those or mark those as we have here with through arrows, but those do eventually drop, of course, into those dual eastbound lefts. The last thing we had during the first task order we had for this particular project, we had looked into making this a yield condition, which is not the same as what it is today. Today, it is a free flow movement, and that's what the city wanted to maintain. So that's what, you know, we wanted to, that was one of the conversions with this full engineering design. That was one of the changes from conceptual to preliminary final plans, as we did include and allow for that wide movement here that will accept a WB 67 truck, that's coming off of a state route in the event that occurs. And then also just allow for that free flow movement to not have any kind of yield condition here that might cause queuing back onto Glen Avenue. Again, same condition that's there today. We're just basically allowing for that in our widening. I think really the last items here are, we're going to be doing some restriping through here just to kind of clean this up and really channelize vehicles around this island. There's currently no striping on this side today, and it doesn't really have a whole lot of chevron striping around the island. We call it detail A. And then we're also going to go ahead and stripe this out slightly, just so, it doesn't feel like a sea of pavement through there to where, a vehicle coming around here, someone behind them doesn't, mistakenly think that that's 2 lanes opening up and try to jet around them. And other than that, we are making a connection up here. We really wanted to, look at overall pedestrian, access and walkability through here. So obviously we have this sidewalk over here that we talked about a minute ago. There's an existing sidewalk on the north side of this little bypass lane. What we're looking at doing is doing a connection back towards the intersection. We had considered a few different alternatives, and this is the one that we had settled on, just to kind of wind people through should they want to walk and cross Glen Avenue. Other than that, that's really, all I've got. I mean, you can see some additional signage again with the one-way signage. Again, it's not changing the condition away from what it is today. We're just simply adding some additional signage just to kind of clarify the intent and the overall access there. So, Garo, did you have anything else you wanted us to cover there?
No, I don't. I think you covered the design pretty well. I would add just kind of the time frame of the project. Going forward, this has been submitted to GDOT for their initial review. Assuming they sign off on it, issue the permit, GDOT, as Zach mentioned, is planning to resurface Highway 17, planning to let that contract this month. If that goes through, they would anticipate work probably to begin in the spring after the weather warms up. So we would need to get our project done ahead of their work. And then they would come in and overlay the whole thing so it looks like a nice clean project. You don't have patched or obvious widenings and that kind of stuff there. So we would need to get that done ahead of what they're doing. Most likely, if this is approved, we would package this with the Macon Talmadge project, which involves a new pipe crossing across 17. Roll those two together, get all that work done so that GDOT can come in the spring and resurface the whole thing. We got a nice clean roadway with our improvements incorporated there. So that's all I would add.
So
No, that's a good point.
spring of 23, then, I mean, we would need to get the bids and let the project go like immediately.
That's right.
Okay, so we're gonna hit all the school second half of the year.
Right. Yeah. And
Okay.
there's not a way around that. And we are where we are with that.
Was there any consideration, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but was there any consideration given to having a light, a signal light on where the west leg is?
GDOT is.
They wouldn't do it.
Jack can speak to it more, but
Yeah.
GDOT is not entertaining a traffic signal at that intersection.
Okay. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is just meeting warrants for these. Unfortunately, being that this is a state route, right? State Route 25 connector. They have overall governing authority here. And they do have certain hours. They like to meet the 8-hour warrant. And I'm not sure, Patrick Knight can speak more to exactly what hours might or might not have been met. But they want to see the full 8 hours. That we've had some unique scenarios, I'll say, to where, they might have approved some like 4 hours in the past. But anytime, you know, that we're dealing with GDOT at all, they do want to meet that full threshold.
And I guess to
And now-
this, we can
Go ahead.
communicate with the Board of Education, in particular, Glen Middle, to encourage drivers of school-age kids to use Fourth Avenue to come in and out.
And we had a meeting with them a couple of weeks ago and did talk with them about that, and Officer Ellis, about sending their traffic to the south. And he agreed that they would do that as much as they could to keep traffic off of this north end of Lanier and send it to the south.
That talk isn't working.
Zach, I got a question for you. This is Johnny Cason. Did you say the island is going to stay there at Lanier Boulevard and Gloucester Street?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
You know, we've got a lot of parking problems. The city wants to take back Howard Coffin Park. Why wouldn't we think about perhaps trying to make some parking out of this thing for one of those fields while we're doing this? And I got a question. I want to just lay it out on the table. I don't like Gloucester Street at all. I do not like it. I think it was completely unnecessary. 20 years, 25 years, perhaps, do it, you know, but I don't know why a roundabout wouldn't take care of a lot of this. And I still don't know why a roundabout up at 17 in Gloucester Street wouldn't take care of a lot of it. I'm not an engineer for sure. You can ask Garrow, he'll tell you that, but I don't understand it at all. I really don't. This looks like a extraneous configuration to me to do what could be a fairly simple maneuver in here, making Goodyear Avenue safer. And like Commissioner Martin says, if you have a roundabout in there, my gosh, you could put a pedestrian crossing in there. It would be very simple to do it. And if I remember correctly, I also stated back when we were talking about this, the planning stage of this thing, that we've got a very large apartment complex that has been approved to some sort for the large tract of land there on Macon, between Macon and Goodyear Ave. And it just seems to me like this is going to confuse that. It really does. We escaped, the joint water sewer was going in there before they found their location, a building that was further west on Gloucester Street. And I thought a great deal about that while they were going to do that. And let me tell you, it was just going to be a nightmare. And the best thing that happened for this city is that the joint water sewer finally saw the light, the folks that were sitting on that board, and abandoned that piece of property. They spent a lot of money there, but the best thing for the longevity of this town was to do exactly what happened there, move the joint water sewer out of this area because of exactly why we're doing all this redesign for. And it is going to get more congested. It is going, the Howard Coffin Park is getting ready to see use that it has never seen. And I sit here and I look at all this maze of what you have presented to us, and very frankly, it's hard to understand, even if you were in this room with us right now, being lay people and not traffic engineers, exactly all that you have presented to us. But I just really think that it in my opinion, we need to rethink this whole project. And again, I see it as an opportunity to help to take care of some parking that is going to be needed when we do get Howard Coffin Park back.
Well, I can't speak to everything you mentioned, but regarding the potential of a roundabout, there are two reasons why that's not really an option here. For one, the volumes on the minor street don't meet the GDOT threshold of 10% of the volume of the major street, and that's a threshold they really almost always required to hit before putting in a roundabout. And the second is just the cost. The cost and impacts of building a multi-lane roundabout right there that accommodates the GDOT design vehicle would be, you know, I'm not a designer, but I think I can comfortably estimate it'd be millions and millions of dollars. So that just wasn't really in the scope.
Zach, I don't mean to interrupt you. I really don't, but exactly what you're saying right now is what I was told when I brought up the thing about the roundabout. I would like to know how much money we're talking about. How much money is there? We've had enough time, if people were really concerned about the betterment of the city of Brunswick, to tell me how much money it is going to cost to do the thing the right way today. I don't, and the right way for the future. I just don't see this being the answer. And particularly when you can't get people across the street there and feel safe doing it. It's going to make it a little safer, but this isn't the answer.
So to answer your cost there, sir, I mean, based on what we're seeing on other projects, being a multi-lane roundabout, I mean, it's easily $3.5–4 million without any kind of right of way, which is, you know, we're 10% of that for this project for the resurfacing. I totally agree. I mean, you know, honestly, with that, I think it would be a good location if all the pins just kind of fell into place. But as far as pedestrian access, you know, we are looking at that overall mid-block crossing, like I'd mentioned at the park, that'll be kind of under phase 2. But without doing any kind of improvements beyond that, kind of given the scope we were given, I mean, this is kind of what we had come up with based on the budget presented.
What is the total budget?
We are at, Gary, you might can answer that, but you know, we're at around $400,000 for this particular project as presented in the plans. Now, again, that is missing the pedestrian mid-block crossing that will be in phase 2. If I had to throw a number at it, you know, I would say probably $80,000 for that particular one. So, you know, all in all, you're probably looking at about $500,000 compared to about $4 million.
Well, still, I mean, this is just me. I've got 4 other people sitting here and I don't hear any echoes at all. And I haven't through this whole thing. But I think whatever you do here could set the tone for Brunswick moving forward. I really do. And I don't see where what you have just presented to us it is the answer to really move it forward. I see it as more congestion. I'll tell you, I use that intersection as a disabled person when I was growing up. I lived in Urbana Park. And I know what it can be there. This thing needs to be done right. It really does. We didn't have the traffic when I was using Howard Coffin Park as part of my growing up, but it's going to be so, what's going to happen in Urbana Park and the other parts of Brunswick here is going to put so much pedestrian traffic out there and moving things the way we're doing with the pedestrians and the bicycles in this community. I don't really see where we're addressing that. And I just think that this commission should say, hey, if you think like I do, let's look at it. Let's take the hard look and see what we can do here. What is the absolute best we can achieve? I don't see it here. I think I presented my case not quite this strong before when we were talking about it, but you're further down the road now and it just looks like a confabulation to me. It really does. But I want to be precise, and I don't like Gloucester Street. I really don't. I think it was something that did not need to be done right now, and I don't see this being necessary the way it's being done. So I do, matter of factly, appreciate all the work that everybody's done. I really do. Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, what I want to ensure is that, just so for my edification, when we're speaking with those who are doing, kind of the construction in the space, we're speaking with DOT, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, if we can make sure that we've coalesced, Commissioner Kason's comments, and if we can make sure that we put it in some sort of letter form and just make sure we send it forward to DOT. So we've stated the concerns from, Commissioner Kason, just to make sure that we get that across, and that he'll continue to keep an eye on it as we develop in this space. But again, we appreciate the work, that you all have done on it.
No question about that whatsoever.
Yep.
None.
I completely agree. City Clerk Atkinson, I just want to make sure that we're able to grab those comments in some way and put them in a letter so we can send it forward to DOT. Perfect. Thank you so much. Any additional comments, questions before we move on? Seeing none, we appreciate you. Thank you, Director. We will now move on to, an update regarding the transit program. Director Hunter.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. As y'all know, in late 2019, we embarked on a process to look at transit within the city. We've been planning with that now for a couple of years. We had a little bit of a hiatus while Lost and Splost negotiations were going on. But Jim Ritchie with Whitman Reichbart and Associates is online with us to give an update as to where we are in that process and a roadmap for how we can move forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jim. And Jim, are you with us?
I am, John. Thank you very much. And I'm going to share screen. And hopefully that will work. So we wanted to give you a update of the revised recommendations for transit service for the greater Brunswick urbanized area and the city of Brunswick. Now, the work has gone on over a couple of years, but it had really been focused on, and I got to make my slides change just a minute. It had focused on a micro transit service proposal. Now, we propose initially a micro transit zone, as you see here in the blue area. Generally, what this is in microtransit, it's an on-call service that you'll call through an app that would enable people to travel within the zone to any sort of shopping or employment destinations. In the second year, if the county were to join in the project, we would plan for a flex route that would extend to St. Simon's Island. And the way a flex route really works is we'll pick up folks there towards the Winn-Dixie shopping center, and we'll ask them where they need to go. And we'll actually take them to the closest intersection, or some cases directly to the properties that they are trying to visit on St. Simon's, have a return similar where they would make a reservation for a ride back. We also want to work on expanded countywide demand response service. Now, in order to make the service possible, we've got to have local share from both the city and the county. We also think an operations partnership will be in order with either the Coastal Regional Commission and a third-party vendor that would handle dispatch and operations. And the city would provide grants administration, vehicle maintenance, and marketing. Now, microtransit, as I've described, is really a new innovation in transit. It's tech-enabled, on-demand, real-time. We want to be able to handle trips generally with a 15-minute or less wait time, and it all depends upon what the demand is at the moment. The service is shared ride, so that there may be more than one person riding at a time on the vehicle. We'd like to see if we can get the microtransit service up with existing funding that you have received from a U.S. Department of Transportation through GDOT. Think we can get the service up and running by as early as next July the 1st. There'd be 5 vehicles. Customer fare would be $2 to $5 one way. We'd have flex tickets and multi-ride passes also available. Residents would sign up online with a credit card or other form of payment. And we'd also have cash ticket sales through the city or other human service agencies. Now, what I think is really exciting now about the service is that the automotive chip shortage somehow is working in our favor. That now the electric medium-duty vehicles are actually ready and available right now, whereas gas versions are expected to require 12 to 18 months. I think this is a really viable option for a electric vehicle. They're 7-passenger with 1 wheelchair lift. We have to use the FTA useful life for 4 years or 100,000 miles, but the vehicles, including the battery, is warranted for 8 years or 100,000 miles. We'll get about 100 miles a day, an 8-hour shift out of each vehicle in the operation. Again, I think this is a viable option for you to start the service. Again, with 5 small electric buses handling 7 passengers with 1 wheelchair. That would operate beginning next July the 1st, and the St. Simons flex route, largely because we think we need greater range, we would use an electric or a gasoline vehicle, 20 to 25 passenger, but these vehicles are going to take a year to 18 months for delivery. So at this point, we think that might be operational by July of 2024. I already mentioned we would expect to leave from a central point in the city to go out to St. Simons, but we'd also have trips by reservation for the service. We think it'll require 2 vehicles, so we'll buy 3, have 1 spare. Fares generally will be paid through the same microtransit app. We think there can be significant hospitality, employer support as well. Now, the budget, this is roughly what we had discussed before. In year 1, the total operating costs are a little less than $1.4 million. We think the microtransit service itself will cost around $800,000, with city planning staff at roughly $300,000 and about $200,000 for maintenance staff. We show the revenues and the net, and we think the total cost in year 1 will be about $220,000 from the city, or the city and county would be required. Now, when we get to year 2, and we have used up the federal stimulus funds that are available, we have a total of about a $2.4 million budget. We have operating revenues, we think, at around $300,000. We can get FTA planning funds at 80% federal, 20% local, but the FTA operations funds are at a 50% local, 50% federal basis. And you do have an annual appropriation that exceeds that $870,000 in federal funding. It means we need a local share of around $950,000 in year 2. And that's exactly why we think it's appropriate, especially because of the service to St. Simons that we have the county engaged in the project. Now, on the capital side, We already have an approved federal grant that's 100% federal for the first $800,000. That pays for the 5 microtransit buses, already security cameras, and right now it's budgeted for shop tools, but we think we can turn that into the charging infrastructure that's necessary for the buses. We want to apply for a fiscal 24 grant that would include 3 buses for the St. Simon's service, bus parking and site improvements over at the city yard that would allow us to make some improvements on the city yard for the operation of these 8 to 10 vehicles. And then we think there's also the opportunity for some further bus stop and sidewalk improvement for the community. So that's about a total fiscal 24 grant of about $1.5 million. Now, of that, this city will need to provide, or the city county would be at 20% of the $1.5 million and 80% through the federal government. There also may be some GDOT participation in the local share for the FY24 grant. High level implementation schedule. Want to talk with the city commission now. With Manager McDuffie's assistance, we'll talk with the county commission perhaps in November and December. We expect the GDOT will make an announcement of the amount of funding that can be available beginning in January, and we'll work through an MOU between the city and the county early in 2023. Now, once we know what the county participation would be, the city would approve a tentative budget. It's not the final budget for the year. We know that occurs in the June or July or June timeframe rather, but this would be a tentative city budget in February of 2023, and we begin to go through the process of hiring a operations contractor, either Coastal Regional Commission or a vendor. We move through with the order for the vehicles, but fortunately they are immediately available to be delivered for the small electric buses. We work on marketing. We also have to get the electric buses ordered, or the gasoline buses rather, for St. Simon's. We work to hire staff beginning in April, and we move on to mechanics towards the end of June, and drivers either through contractor or through the Coastal Regional Commission. Leads us ready for fiscal 24 for starting up the microtransit service in July. We've got to have some real agreements we think are possible with the College of Coastal Georgia and the Technical College as well. We'll be making some parking and site improvements, the design and then the construction. We'll have a little bit of time where we've got to work around the construction that's going on. We anticipate the delivery of the 3 vehicles for St. Simon's maybe by June of 2024. We staff up a little bit more and we're ready to start for phase 2 in July of 2024. Hey, I've been real fast in presentation, but let me make sure we emphasize what the transit service is about. And it's really about giving people access to opportunities. The microtransit service will mean that people can get to shopping, they can get to jobs, students can get to educational opportunities. Now, we have done the market research. We think there's sufficient ridership for this level of a service to operate. It will intentionally expect to be modest ridership, 500 to 1,000 riders a day. Once we get this really up and running well, I think is viable. And we'd be glad to answer any questions or discuss the alternatives with you.
Any questions or comments?
Mayor, I'd like to just add to the presentation information. We have been monitoring a couple of systems very closely. One in Valdosta and one in Gainesville. And basically looked at what they've done because their implementation has been similar to what we're looking at. I spoke directly with the contact in Valdosta and also in Gainesville at the conference that I attended last week for the GCCMA. And both, one thing that they indicated was once they started their systems, both exceeded expectations and had to add vehicles within 6 months of starting because they had so much demand. So they felt like their systems were running very successfully. The Gainesville system is one that they are running in-house because they had a transit system previously. The Valdosta system is one that would be similar to ours because they did not have transit and they were starting up. So they did theirs as a turnkey with the third-party vendor and, you know, has worked very well. So we are looking at both of those operations and hopefully we'll learn from their experience and also, you know, benefit from the them starting prior to us and, you know, kind of work out some of the issues that we may have faced going forward.
Could we get a copy of the implementation schedule? That would be great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say thank you to Director Hunter, all of those who've been working on it, especially the BATS committee. I know a lot of work Commissioner Martin and others have put in over a long time. This plan isn't just fly by night. They've been working on it a really long time to have a good product in front of us. Transit is absolutely something that I think every modern municipality needs. We are one of those municipality that needs transit. The question that I have, and this may be for City Manager McDuffie or Director Hunter, is the two other entities that you talk about. I know both of them also have regional airports. Does their transportation go out to their airport by chance? Do we know that?
I'm not sure. I would have to check. I think Gainesville probably does have
Right.
regional airport,
Uh-huh.
but I'm not sure how. Now, I do know that the transit in Gainesville is mainly encompassed in the city.
Okay.
So I don't know if they have that as a, you know, addition to what they provide.
Right.
But they are encompassed within the city.
I know as we continue to have the conversation, I know as we, you know, had really strong discussions about lost and other dollars that come into the community. I know Brunswick as a whole, this full commission has been completely lockstep in support of finding a smart, prudent way to do transit, and we'll continue to go forward in that, whether that is us as a municipality solo trying to find the dollars to do that and provide that for our citizens. But we hope to partner not only with our partners in the county, but also with private entities around Brunswick and around the community that need that service. The one thing that I will say is I think it is of the utmost importance that we continue to work with county partners to try and stretch that service to the airport, including the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center is smart, including the college, making sure we include the hospital. But I think the plan that we see, and I know it's economical, right? And if we got to do it ourselves, we may not be able to include that flex route, but continuing to work with partners to try and include the airport. I know we're starting to get more flights, a lot of traffic, and we want to be able to accommodate people coming into our city and being able to move whether into Brunswick or the county in St. Simons.
Mayor, I also think that, you know, in recent conversations that I've had, especially with the county manager, the county is seeing the importance of transit and considering, you know, their engagement with it. So I will take those comments and certainly we'll look at those because we were going to provide some information to the county commission, but I think those are good questions for us to answer going forward so that they can see how it will impact them as well. So thank you for that.
If I remember correctly, the county was not involved or interested at all in this project. And I was surprised when I was doing my preparation for this meeting to see all of a sudden now that there is some interface with the county. How did that happen? I haven't been involved with it.
Well, the BATS committee has been providing support. The BATS committee, policy committee has been providing support, which the county participates in. And again, conversations that I've had with the county manager and with the college and businesses in the chamber, I think, has kind of given a different perspective for the need for transit. And I want to mention also, you know, as we address the homeless issue in the community, transportation to jobs is such an important aspect of that.
Well, I was really surprised to see that, and I'm proud that you have reached out to them, because I think that the county has got to be involved with this for the city to strap it on. There's too much at stake here. And I think I just talked just a little bit about, I do go back to the 1950s when the city had a bus route. And I can vividly remember the buses going around Brunswick empty. And I can remember and I guess they were holdovers from the war, is where our city buses came from. But they were not in good shape either. So there's an initial really capital outlay like we were just presented, but the maintenance for those things is awesome. And I will say this, I do think electric, if we do it, has some maintenance pluses for us. If we do enter this, I just don't know all the ins and outs about the mileage and that sort of thing, but it's sure a lot less costly to run an electric engine than it is a fossil fuel engine, and a lot less maintenance. So, but I was tickled to see the county in here and willing to talk to us about it. And I sincerely appreciate that.
I have just one quick comment that I think it would be important to keep a conversation going with the developer on Highway 17. It just got annexed and rezoned, as they get ready to come online, what their needs of their folks that live there, where they work, transportation, et cetera.
Any additional questions or comments? Hold on one second. Hold on. Do we don't have public comment during this period? Yeah. No worries. Any additional comment or question from?
I do have
Commissioner?
one question. Is there any talks about the bus route going to Jekyll?
No, we haven't looked at anything that would provide service to Jekyll, although, you know, the needs for transportation for work does expand to that area. I will talk with Mr. Ritchie and see what that would entail. Of course, you know, this is a phase project and it certainly will evolve, but I think that is a good concern to look at.
And I will say that those who are in leadership at the Jekyll Island Authority understand that it is an issue. And, you know, just like, you know, business owners probably on St. Simon's, they want to be a part of the conversation.
And Mr. Hooks is a BATS member too, so yeah.
Yeah, if I could just mention, we had outreach to both Jekyll and St. Simon's during the study process. And absolutely there's interest, but we think the market is stronger to St. Simon's right now, and thought that was where we'd start, but that doesn't mean that's where we finish.
Business work hours for employees. I said you have designated routes, on work hours for employees specifically. And just have limited routes for that, just for the employees. The hospitality industry employees specifically.
And I think that may be a little bit of where the St. Simon's Flex route comes in, right?
Yeah, that's specifically one of the things that we talked about for St. Simon's in talking with different leadership at employers there. And we did have same conversations with Jekyll as well. The challenge, at least starting up, that we face is we're limited to the urbanized area classification. And that's really the area that you saw in that initial map outlined in blue. That's all we're funded for, is to operate mainly in that area. So anything outside of that is really secondary, but it's definitely something that we looked at and anticipate future expansion to.
You don't know if the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center if they still run the buses?
They do still run buses. And that's something that was discussed about, again, future connections. We may not be able to get all the way up to FLETC, but we may be able to coordinate with them so that there's access both ways for their students.
How many are they operating? Do you know?
I don't know.
I haven't seen them around at all. Like I said, I go back to the city when we had the buses. They were city buses, and I also remember vividly that Glencoe ran buses, and one of the bus stops was a huge oak tree right up here where City Market is. And all the sailors used to sit around that very large oak tree up there on the roots of that thing, wait on the bus to come pick them up. Almost all during the day, you could see the sailors sitting out there waiting on the bus to come get them. But, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, if you all didn't know, Johnny is our historian. He takes us back and tells us things some of us never heard of and knew about Brunswick. So it's always interesting to hear that.
It's good.
I was walking and crawling back in those days. So.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Director Hunter. We'll move forward to Urbana Perry Park Neighborhood Planning Assembly. Update Chairman Kitts and Vice Chairperson Collins to update commission regarding issues and concerns of Urbana Perry Park. Thank you all for being with us, and thank you all for being involved and hands-on neighborhood planning assembly.
Good evening, mayors, commissioners. How are you this evening?
Good, good.
William Kitts, Chairman of the Urbana Perry Park Neighborhood Planning Assembly. Few things, talking points. We're going to divide up our time. I know we have limited time, so I'll just try to be brief and memorable. Going back to alcohol, I believe you guys have all seen the letter that I sent about the number of alcohol establishments within our boundaries and those adjacent to it. Of those, and we're still working with the police to determine if any additional establishments have as many problems as those on L Street. But we do want some concern placed upon those particular establishments on L Street because we know that those are an issue. Again, just today, school coming out, both those parking lots were full, and the children were having to traverse those areas as they were coming out of school. So that's my alcohol portion there. Please just keep us informed so that our neighbors will also have the opportunity to speak up and share their voice on those issues. Garrow kind of stole my thunder with the Lanier Crossing and the Marsh Trail. We were very adamant about ensuring that my neighbors and I who do walk to the Lanier Park, the walking trail there has an opportunity to not walk in the street and have to play chicken with traffic. So we appreciate the fact that there will be a sidewalk there. Commissioner Case, and I do agree that we may be able to do something better there, but I am appreciative of that sidewalk. Moving on to the trail, of course, I'm going to step on John's toes with the trail there. Again, I think that that trail would be just as the same if it was on the west side of the road, instead of operating on the east side and having to deal with the marsh. Since we already have existing sidewalk and pavement and crossings and businesses on the west side of 17. I think the infrastructure already supports maybe an expansion or a wider sidewalk, inclusive of our already additional sidewalk that's there. And I'll turn it over to Madam Vice Chair.
Good evening, elected city officials and public servants. This evening, I stand before you as the vice chairperson of the Urbana Prairie Park Neighborhood Planning Assembly. Brunswick is home. Though it is by far the smallest place I've ever lived, when I left home as a naive teen, I knew then that someday I would return home. I deem it a privilege to represent the neighborhood where I was raised and now a homeowner. Perhaps it may be providential, but I stand before you because you are aware that our neighborhood planning assembly meets every month. Tonight, I want to share some of the recurring concerns addressed in our meetings because we want solutions. Flooding. Since 2000, Gregory and Simona Holmes, and this is Mrs. Holmes standing with us, have lived at 1819 Macon Avenue, Brunswick, Georgia, since 2000. It is a corner property at Macon Avenue and Talmadge Avenue. They have experienced flooding problems since purchasing their home. However, they still have chosen to remain in Urbana Prairie Park. Not because they don't have somewhere else they could live. It's a choice. Mr. and Mrs. Holmes have had extreme flooding problems for 10+ years. For at least 12 of those years, she and her husband have communicated with elected city officials as well as city public servants about those extreme flooding conditions. So we are asking that infrastructure improvements for the Macon Avenue and Talmadge Avenue flooding problem be made. We also have flooding at K Street between Johnston and Lee Street. Flooding between J Street and Wilson Avenue. These aren't new. There's nothing new about them. We've had promises, not action. So we ask that SPLOST funds to be needed in order for there to be improvements. Question one. What is to be done to remedy these concerns if SPLOST is not approved? Is there a remedy? Because for us, if you can spend 1.2 million of city dollars for a Marshside trail that personally I don't agree with, then why haven't you done something for these homeowners in this neighborhood? It smacks in the face of disrespect. My next concern is about speeding. We have speeding issues on J Street and Niles Street, Talmadge Avenue to Glen Avenue, L Street between Bartow Street and Lee Street when children are crossing to and from Burroughs Millet. We do have a crosswalk on Bartow and L. We do have a crosswalk on Lee and L. How many children use those buttons to cross? It's just not something that children do. We've been told that education is the answer, that Burroughs Millet should Make sure children know when they're crossing to go to Brooklyn Homes, when they're crossing to go to Perry, Mercer Abbott Andrews Terrace, that they should know to cross, use the crosswalk signal. When I was growing up, a train used to pass by Perry Elementary School, talk about history. And guess what children would do? The train is coming. Just for the heck of it, children would crawl underneath the train to make sure they got underneath that train and across without being harmed. That's what children do. So yes, I agree that we should, teach our children to use a crosswalk when they're going to and from school, but all don't. So far, no harm has come to them, but we are concerned about it. Know that we appreciate the diligence of our code enforcement people. We appreciate Mr. Charnock and Public Works staff for improved services and attention to our concerns in UPP, but there's still room for more. And UPP is an acronym for Urbana Perry Park. We appreciate the support of Chief Jones and his officers and the emphasis that he has led them for community service, because we should be one community. We also appreciate the support of Mrs. McDuffie and Mr. Bravo in their attentiveness to our issues. So know that we would like this commission and city officials to understand the importance of communicating and involving NPAs during early stages of proposed actions, such as what has been discussed this evening. Sometimes if we don't come to a meeting, we don't know what's going on. That's not good. So we ask you to understand and recognize that NPAs have been established to communicate, for there to be dialogue and exchange back and forth so that we can share our input, our questions, and our concerns. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity.
Is there anything else? Chairman Kitts or Vice Chair? Is that everyone? Yes. I didn't know you pointed over here. Okay.
They've come before us before, right? About flooding.
Yeah.
So.
I don't want to make it a habit of, I want to use those times to be able to listen to our citizens, to be able to take that in, to be able to give us time to produce actual answers and not just, kind of fluff to be said in public. So I want you to know that we've taken down what we've heard as far as liquor stores, west side of 17, 18, 19, making the flooding, the consistent flooding since the purchase in the 2000. And let me say to Mrs. Holmes that I've been in office for 10 months, but I would hope to speak for former Mayor Harvey, who is here, and former commissioners, that I think that they did as well as they could with the resources that they had to try and mitigate flooding through the city. And we've seen some of the redevelopments of some of the streets, but we always can do better and want to do better for our citizens. And thank you for calling yourself a member of our community, and let us go to work on it as we have for College Park and Magnolia Park and other areas of the South Side. So we just want to make sure, number one, we apologize for that flooding and want to continue to work on it, but also continue to work on it with you at the table. So thank you for being here. And the couple of other projects, Macon and Talmadge, Jay and Wilson, that we will look at as well. I will say the dollars that have been allocated for the sidewalk projects that are mentioned, I will say a wealth of those dollars, if not all of those dollars, are federal dollars that are designated in that space. And so we want to make sure that we are using those dollars correctly to mitigate and grow, not only mitigate flooding to protect our marshlands, but to also grow a multimodal municipality. However, I will say that for the plan that this commission has put together on SPLOST, we have done the hard work of each commissioner being up here, thinking about the affected areas through the city. And there are additional dollars that weren't in previous SPLOST before, not only for streets throughout the south side, but also for major thoroughfares in the south side of our community. So we want to make sure that we do as best as we can to explain the work that we are doing to ensure that we have the dollars to invest in our infrastructure. With that, I will jump to an update regarding the tiny house program with Hand in Hand in Glen. Ms. Hagee?
Johnson. Harris, Jason. Thank you for having me here. Good evening. I'm Linda Hagee. I'm the treasurer of Hand in Hand of Glen. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organized to help end homelessness in Glen County. We're here to give you an update on our project to build 60 tiny homes and a community center at 4621 Altama Avenue here in Brunswick. With me tonight is our Director of Operations, Carolyn Johnson, Alice Parker, one of our most valued volunteers, and my fellow board member, Betty Moore. Ann Stembler, our chair, could not be with us tonight. She had knee replacement surgery last week, and so she's a little immobile still. She sends her regards. Of course, we share the concerns of Glen County citizens about homelessness, but we believe there's only one solution. House them. We believe in housing first. Once they're living in a safe, dry, secure place, we can help them focus on other issues they might be facing, whether it's alcoholism, other addictions, mental health. But at that point, they won't be homeless. They'll belong to a community that supports them. Here are the financials. In a noted 2-year study in Mecklenburg, North Carolina, they found that caring for one individual who was homeless cost the community about $40,000 a year due to unscheduled visits to the hospital, courtroom time, overnight jail time, longer incarcerations, emergency room visits, ambulances, lawyers, police time, and time to respond to complaints. $40,000 a year. To house that same individual in permanent, supportive, affordable housing costs the taxpayer about $13,600 a year, with the added benefit that the individual is receiving services that might help him or her return to be a productive member of the community. That's a savings of $26,400 a year per individual housed. Now, we live in Brunswick. There's a cost of living differential between Mecklenburg County, which is Charlotte, and Brunswick. That cost of living differential is 84%. So still, we could be saving $22,176,000 per individual housed on an annual basis for Brunswick, or $1,330,560 a year in savings to the taxpayers of Glen County, if we could house 60 people. Hand in hand is building 60 tiny homes in a community center where we will supply wraparound services to our residents. The whole project will cost the taxpayers nothing. We've not received 1 cent of public money. No government assistance has been received. This is all private money donated by more than 500 people nationally. And why are 500 people nationally interested in what we're doing in Brunswick? Because they realize that if we can do it for 60 people in Brunswick, maybe they can do it for 600 people somewhere else, or 6,000 people. So far, the project looks like it's going to cost us about $5 million. The land and the existing church buildings that we bought cost about 35% of that $5 million. Sewers, plumbing, electricity, heating, air conditioning, roads and sidewalks. That's all called infrastructure on our balance sheet. Costs another 12%, about $600,000. Refurbishing the old church buildings and turning them into classrooms and a clinic for Dr. Kavanaugh Chandler's Coastal Community Health Services and a kitchen for America's Second Harvest will cost about 8% of that total of $5 million. And 60 tiny homes of 240 square feet each with a complete kitchen, a full bath, will cost about 42% of that total, about $2,100,000. About 3% will be spent on security and landscaping, including a gatehouse, which will be an available substation for both Glenn County and the Brunswick Police on duty. Both Jacques Baptiste and Chief Kevin Jones came forward and volunteered to help us with our security issues at the site. We have run into all the COVID pandemic related slowdowns, supply chain issues, material shortages, shipping delays, competing with more lucrative projects. So scarce resources are definitely a problem, like workers, materials, contractors, time and attention and focus, and of course, postponed meetings and hearings that slow down progress. But today, we have 18 tiny homes totally ready to go, 12 more houses almost completed, needing things like drywall, kitchen counters, a couple of cooking units, and some frame beds. These 12 we hope will be ready by mid-November. And at that time, with help from people in this room like John Hunter and Tim White, Chris Jones, we hope to have a partial certificate of occupancy. And half of our community center is finished. It includes a large classroom, 2 small classrooms, a huge gathering room, a kitchen, a laundromat. That's all done. The second part of the building is under rehab right now. That's where our clinic and our pantry will be. All 60 houses have been erected on cement slabs. All of the housing frames are up. The roofs are on. If you've driven by, you'll see the village is almost completed. We're about to lay down a geocell road that will meander through the property and make it accessible to emergency vehicles so they can reach every house on the campus. We have been granted 60 project-based vouchers by the Brunswick Housing Authority. Thank you very much. William Kitts has been a friend of ours from the beginning and understands what has to happen here in order for this to all come together. And with God's help and the help of many of you in this room, we hope to have our partial certificate of occupancy in late November and be welcoming our first residents by Christmas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments?
The housing, the vouchers from housing, what will that take care of?
I'm sorry.
What would that take care of? Is there a monthly fee to stay? Is there a deposit for residents to move in?
We're not quite sure what the dollar amount is as yet. We have been given the vouchers. We don't have a firm commitment of how much that voucher would be for. We figure that our running rate is going to be something around $700,000 a year. It breaks down, you know, if you do the math, to about $1,000 per house per month. We won't be getting that from the housing authority by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll get some portion of that. The other portion will have, you know, we'll have to raise the money somehow. So it will take care of a portion. The $1,000 per month per unit includes all of the services that we will be providing, many of which are done on a volunteer basis by people who are currently providing those services anyway. For example, Dr. Chandler's already has his clinic in place. This would just be moving to another facility for him, but it would be the same, if you will, personnel commitment that he's already got to put forth. So it's just a matter of location rather than of incurring additional expense for him. That's how a lot of our classes are done. They are currently done at the college or somewhere else, the hospital for nutrition and whatnot, and we're just moving them to our location.
I have a quick question. As far as the criteria for the applicants, in order to qualify to live there, are they from Glenn County?
Oh, yes, they have to
Okay,
be from
so-
Glenn County,
okay.
and in most cases that they will have records in the coordinated entry system, which is a national system that more or less tracks homeless through various interactions with state and local government agencies and clinics. And they will help us find our applicants. We will be doing a final screening on them, but they do a lot of the initial screening of applicants for us and then give us a pool of people from which to select our residents.
Thank you.
So is there some type of income consideration? I know they're homeless, but there
Mhm.
are other veterans may receive it. They may not be homeless because they're broke. Per se,
Yes,
but
so-
they have some type of income coming in. It
So
just may
Commissioner
not be-
Harris, what we understand is that our people, if they're going to have a voucher, they would go through the same kind of assessment that BHA does on others who are coming into their housing, which is if there's an ability for the person to pay some portion of their income to bring down the amount that the housing authority would pay, that they know that. They see what that check is, they get affirmation of it. And it's usually a third, I believe, but sometimes I think it's up to 40%.
So per home, what's the cost per home? Not including all of the other amenities that they will have access to, like the health and all of the other stuff. But per home specifically, the cost of just living in that home. Have
Well,
you
we
all
figure
calculated?
it's about 1,200 a month, but I mean, that's a fully loaded price. It does not include our costs of building, our cost of construction, just the ongoing costs. Fully loaded would be about 1,300, but we realize, you know, they're not going to pay that. They're going to pay something around probably more like $800, something like that.
Linda, thanks for what y'all are doing out there. It's a great project. And I was wondering about the utilities. Are you doing common utilities or?
Well, the way we're going to do it is, I mean, the utilities are going to be paid for all in one click. And quite frankly, it's economical for us to have for example, the electrical come in on one bill rather than have it come in on 60 bills. But what we're doing is we're logging 3 or 4 of the houses
so that we can tell about what it's costing us on a per house basis to do this, because what we're trying to do is make sure that somebody could replicate this if they wanted to, either a government agency. Chatham County, for example, in Savannah, has the Cove at Dundee and some other homeless housing that they do. So it's helpful if we can tell people this is what it's going to cost you, but we're probably going to end up charging it out on a per house basis, predicated on what those 3 or 4 of the 60 use in the way of electricity and water.
How about with the water and the sewer?
Same thing.
Same thing.
We have a meter on the house for the electrical, but the water and sewer are just, we're just going to have to split it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I know this has been a long journey. So we look forward to celebrating when you get
Thank
your
you.
CO and
Thank you.
come
There's
out
so
and take
many
a
people
look.
in this room that I just can't say enough about the help that we've gotten from the city. It's been John Hunter, especially, I mean, he has been there since day one with us, and I can't thank him enough. And
some history here for you. It wasn't good. It wasn't good history at the time, but probably the way things didn't turn out in South Brunswick have turned out pretty doggone good out there where you are.
yes,
I would think it's just going to be much more productive out there.
I think so. And I'm looking forward to that bus route. I hope it goes by our place.
Yeah.
We'll even build a little station for them to stop there.
It's great.
Commissioner Kaysen, thank you so much for your help.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Any other
much. Any
questions?
additional comments or questions? Hearing none.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you for
appreciate
being
you.
here.
Okay, with that, we'll follow up with number, I think we can do these jointly, 8 and 9, which is updates to improvements at Lovers Oaks, and then updates on the Goodyear Park improvement plan. And those are both City Manager McDuffie.
Thank you. I'm just going to introduce this one. This was brought to me by Ms. Colhart and Ms. Lancaster, and I will share my screen just to show what they have done and what they are requesting improvements for Lovers Oak. I know this information is in your packet, and it's certainly just to show where we are moving forward with this, but I think it's a wonderful addition to this project, to this tourism attraction that the city has, and I'll give them a moment for comment.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us.
I'm Miriam Lancaster, and Sandra Colhart is with me also. I would say that Sandy is the guardian angel of Lovers Oak. She lives right there on that block of Albany Street. And Golden Isles Fund for Trees is the trust fund for Lovers Oak. Over the years, we have raised close to $10,000, over $10,000, that is set aside in our organization, and we are a countywide organization, but would set aside specifically for Lovers Oak. That tree, as we all know, is, according to some legend, 900 years old. It does require some attention and care, but not a lot. And one of the things we're going to be doing in connection with this improvement project is to have Roger Dittmer, who is the Dean of Local Arborists, certified by the International Society of Arboriculture, to kind of give Lovers Oak a checkup and see if there's anything that we need to do to improve the health of the tree. The other part of this project is to kind of improve the visitor experience. Since Sandy lives near Lovers Oak, she sees people all day long pull up in, park under the tree, stand in the middle of Prince and Albany to look at the tree, getting out in traffic. So the program that we've come up with, which is in your packet, will basically move all the activity, we hope, to the south side of the tree. We have 2 new interpretive signs we're going to be installing. This one depicts the history of Lovers Oak. It has some historical photographs and a picture of a historical spoon, which was a souvenir probably over 100 years ago when people came to Brunswick and were interested in the tree back then. It was a place in the Victorian era where people actually got married or went there in their wedding clothes to have their photograph taken. We also have a QR code that's going to come up to the city's website, and it will tell the full tale of the Indian maid and her lover who supposedly met under the tree centuries ago in kind of a Romeo and Juliet scenario where they weren't supposed to love one another because they were from competing tribes. And that's supposedly where Lover's Oak got its name. The second sign will be more about the ecology of the live oak, which of course is native to the South. It only grows in the coastal region from Virginia around the coast to the Gulf Coast to Texas. So we have the information there about the ecology of the tree, the resurrection fern, which of course is very unique to the live oak, and the Spanish moss. So when visitors come to the site, there's a space right past Sandy's driveway where people will be able to park their vehicle, and it will say Lover's Oak Visitor Parking. You'll see that on the map that we provided. And then these two signs will be on a single post back to back on the south side of the tree. And then we also propose to move an existing sign, which was placed there during the American Bicentennial, commemorating that this is a bicentennial tree and was alive during the time the US Constitution was adopted. That sign will be moved to the south side as well. And then you'll see here, we'll have one sign on the north side that will designate this as Lover's Oak. And we want that sign to be consistent with the signature square signs for the different squares. So we're looking at having a consistent downtown look where our interpretive signage is very similar to the signature squares, will be mounted in the same way. And then the directional sign, the kind of title sign that tells you you're at Lover's Oak, will be very similar to the signature square sign. So this whole project is funded through the funds that Gift has raised, through donations, through an estate sale that Sandy's father was Ernest Kraft. And I think Mr. Kaysen, our historian.
I appreciate that, because if it wasn't for Ernie Kraft, we wouldn't be sitting in a wonderful building.
Yeah, that's true too.
Exactly.
It is an honest truth. He loved this building, and I tell you what, I loved working with him. I really did. He was something that I'll always cherish.
And he loved that tree, and so did his wife. So Sandy was gracious enough to donate the proceeds of the estate sale when her father passed away, and then some additional items that we brought in. Magnolia Garden Club assisted us with the sale. And like I said, we now have this money available for the improvements we're making now and for anything that the tree will need in the future. Any questions?
Yeah, well, number one, I just want to give you a round of applause for the work that you all have done is amazing. It shows the in-depth care of our community. Thank you for being a member of our community, living next door, but also caring about it enough to pour your time in. So that's number one. We just want to say thank you. Any questions from the commission?
No, I, again, appreciate y'all taking an asset and a treasure in our community and really highlighting it, because we shouldn't keep it a secret. We need to make sure that, yes, I see them too. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it is a big destination.
And one question I have, when Roger comes and looks at the tree, I don't know if y'all are planning to have a sign that says, please don't climb the tree, or if he says that's okay, for people to just kind of climb up to that first where everything branches out. I feel a lot of people do that. So I just wasn't sure.
We will ask him about that.
Yeah.
Sandy actually found in her historical research that the tree originally covered, the canopy of the tree was an acre. and 100 people could climb up and sit in that tree at one time.
Yeah. And it's all that's included in this.
Well,
So
yeah.
you could almost count it back
That's,
and
mhm,
get back to all the newspapers and all the history back and
mhm. Yeah, it's a lot of information, which is great.
Right,
Yeah.
but we will ask Roger about that and any recommendations he has, people, you see people on Facebook say things like, oh, that asphalt is suffocating that tree, but with the age of this tree, any attempt to remove it may be more
Mhm.
harm than good. So we'll certainly ask for recommendations on any kind of pruning, injections,
Yeah.
protecting the tree roots and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, and our plan is to hopefully have the signs fabricated in the next 30 days and have them placed and dedicated before the end of the year. So
Great.
we'll let you know when that happens.
Thank you.
Really look forward to joining you.
Sandy has put a nice swing over in her yard and they can come take their pictures there. Our family swing.
Small little iron stands that people can put their cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You know, when they got lost there.
Mhm.
Thomasville has actually,
Mhm.
the cameras on the telephone poles, and there's a lot of maintenance with that. I called it next and about. It's a very small-
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you've been over to the visitor center on the island where they have one of the tree spirits,
Mhm.
they have a selfie stand.
Yeah,
there, so
they
yeah,
do.
so-
Mhm.
It's just
Mhm.
on tree center.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you all.
Sandy, I want
Thank
to say too, what in public, what you've done with your home there is absolutely amazing.
Mhm.
I'm kidding about the swing. Please don't go get on Sandy's swing. It is immaculate there. It really is.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, number 9, update Goodyear Park improvements plan, city manager McDonough.
Okay, we have been, as you know, this is ongoing. The Parks Improvement Plan has been just for the last year and a half, just making improvements in a lot of the parks. And right now, we're focusing again on Goodyear Park. We had proposed to have the fitness court, and we're hoping to move forward. We've been talking with our partners and developing partners and are glad to have different entities involved. I just put together a short update and brief information, and most of this you all have seen. We basically had replacing of the swing set, adding the maze and the fitness court, and constructing a pavilion, and putting in shades and picnic tables. We've had the same delays that everyone has had in terms of workmanship and materials for our park improvements, but we hope to move forward and get the Goodyear Park moving, as well as the Orange Park. Some of the benefits, of course, of the Goodyear Park, as I show you the fitness court and the maze, that is what the fitness court will look like, similar to that. But this is kind of one of those intensive fitness opportunities that adults will have outdoors. And I think with COVID still a concern, people using gyms indoors, this can be a great alternative for that. And we also want to encourage use by the hospital for the wellness program, by the college for the athletics program, and also by the high schools for their athletics programs going forward. So we want to encourage a lot of involvement from entities around the fitness court and also in that community. So, our benefits are to increase the outdoor opportunities, to providing a fitness training platform for those entities, for upgrading, all the amenities in the parks for more usage, and also for just to provide a relaxing outdoor environment. So we have looked at and spoken to our partners. We are happy to say that Georgia Pacific is entertaining support for our fitness court and the park improvements. We have the College of Coastal Georgia, the Southeast Georgia Health Systems, Peak Golden Owl's Beautiful. They have put in an orchard in that park, And also the Labyrinth Design Committee has put in the maze. So there's a lot of people working to make the improvements in the park, and we're just happy to say we are moving forward and hopeful to finish up some of the improvements going forward. So with that, I'll ask Tim if he has any comment in regards to it, but that was basically all I wanted to do to update the commission on where we are. Thank you.
Perfect. Tim, any comment?
Yes, I'm out from the your point about the new picnic site is we have those on site. It's just a logistical nightmare with getting on the trees and getting things placed in a reasonable time frame. But those are going to do this, and hopefully we can get at least a year and March kicked off within this month.
Perfect. Thank you.
What's the anticipated lifespan of that fitness court? And I know this might not be exactly what it looks like, but
This is a concept that's been around since the 80s. It started in the West Coast. Awesome. So it's built with high heat material.
okay.
To be damaged, it would be not by nature. So it's all that is taken into account in its design. There actually, this will be the third one at this point.
Okay. And then what about lighting at night?
I've already had lighting installed.
Okay.
And it advanced additional lighting, both in the play area, because this being more of a teenage, young adult activity, and the children will be next door in the play area. So we've improved the lighting for security and safety.
Thank you. Mhm.
I saw two things, or one thing I want to ask about in the write-up, the trees that are going to be removed there at Parkwood.
We still haven't made a determination on exactly what trees may be removed, but we are looking at that and trying to determine what's best for the park and for, safety.
Those pine trees are lightning rods. That's the way I look at those things. I really do. I sure hate to haul them off to a landfill, though. I really do. I'd rather save them and try to remove them at a time when we could get something for the timber, or have them removed free or something.
Well, we have Georgia Pacific as one of our partners, and that will be a question that
Change
I
your
hope that
mind?
they can help us answer.
That'd be great. And the other thing is the sidewalk.
Again, we are looking at, sidewalk improvements as well. So I think there's a partial sidewalk placement right now, but based on funding, we'll look at full sidewalk replacements as well.
On the front on Parkwood, but there's nothing but a ditch on the rest of it, and the west side is where people park, along with the east side, they park over there. I'd been told that we had pipe and ordered, and we were waiting on it is what we were doing. I don't know where that is. Oh, Garrett's still here. I'm sorry, Garrett.
We do have some.
I apologize.
Back there. We just, other projects just haven't been able to get to it yet. They will run this and then repair that sidewalk.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what, when we do all this stuff, that's gonna be one whale of a park. It really is. It is going to be. Maybe we could even get the tennis courts used in there. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now we can move on to items to be considered for approval. First, approval of October 5th regularly scheduled minutes. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I hear a
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We will now move on to consider approval of contract for construction of a restroom and equipment building at Orange Square. Director Albertson. Or Tim, back again.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, thank you. what I'm presenting tonight, this was a project that we put out for bid. We did get multiple offers back for the project. One being the vendor that has supplied the last 2 bathroom facilities over at Overlook and Liberty Ship Park. We were able to, with some discussion and back and forth negotiation, select at this point a local contractor that was $132,700. That ended up being $106,000 less than the other contract that was submitted by the vendor that we had been using. This local contractor also allowed us to customize the design of this particular structure, because it not only will serve as restrooms, but the maintenance facility for the water system for the splash pad. So this is actually the first step of the Orange Park revitalization and upgrade process. So we're presenting this to you. This contractor, this is a 100-day build out. I think this is probably going to be a little less than 100 days, but he's given himself some float, and he is eager to really start a relationship with the city of Brunswick. And at his rates allows us then, affords us the opportunity then to put more facilities in other areas because of his pricing structure. So we've gone back, we made some in part of the paperwork, some of the adjustments to his original quote, upgraded some items. So I don't really look for any change orders or anything, because we've covered pretty much anything that would kind of pop up in the process. So we are asking for your consideration for approval for this evening, so we can get this project rolling.
Thank you so much for your work on this, Tim. Questions or comments from the commission?
I have one. Michael Thomas.
Yes.
I thought he was Cumberland Construction, and this is Mikan Construction.
He's working in association with.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's like a partnership for this
Yes, ma'am.
particular,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, we will open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract for construction of the restroom and equipment building at Orange Square with Mikan Construction as presented.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. We will now move on to consider approval of the reorganization of the Brunswick Fire Department. Chicago.
Can I go
Yes.
back,
Oh,
ask one quick
sorry, I
question?
apologize. Yes.
Regarding the contract for the bathrooms at Orange Park, I'm assuming it was all vetted, the contract agreement was vetted through our strong attorney.
Yeah, Garrett sent everything over to me. I think it was about a week and a half ago to take a look at, and there was nothing of particular note, but yeah, it was a standard contract.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Wanted to make sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am interim chief, Lawrence Cargyle. I'll be presenting on behalf of Brunswick Fire Department the proposed changes. We have for you what we believe to be progressive and instrumental improvements to the Brunswick Fire Department. And for your consideration, we have the following. In your packet, you should have 2 pieces of information, key pieces of information we'll be talking about. The first one is proposed additions. It will add 1 additional assistant chief. The deputy chiefs will be reclassified to battalion chiefs to more closely align with their duties and traditional fire service departments around the nation. We will be adding 3 additional lieutenants, 3 additional apparatus operator engineers, 1 inspector with a primary focus of public safety and community outreach, 1 training officer, and finally 1 EMA coordinator. We believe that these changes or this increase in our department would accomplish several key things. key goals: reinforce leadership. It would provide and implement, in doing this and having this increased staffing, we will be able to also implement a progressive vision for the Brunswick Fire Department. We will more clearly define the chain of command within our department. It will allow promotional opportunities to help build up future leaders and strengthen those leaders within the department. It will bolster our community risk reduction, community outreach, prevention, and the educational needs of our community. It will help to identify training deficiencies or needs and then implement the training necessary to create a more modern thinking and better prepared Brunswick Fire Department moving forward. And it will push our jurisdiction forward in the preparedness in the face of large incidences or natural disasters. These additional, a few of these things are targeted improvements to our department. So I'll just address a few of them briefly. The additional firefighters are necessary because, as you all know, it was approved to purchase a new tower truck for our jurisdiction. That tower truck will be delivered in hopefully April of 2023. And for us to operate this apparatus according to NFPA standards and Georgia firefighter standards and training, it must be fully staffed, which would be 4 members. The upstaffing provides the personnel necessary to accomplish this goal without having to take another apparatus out of service in order to fully staff that new apparatus. Additional lieutenants, the addition of 3 lieutenants means that each station now will have 1 captain and 1 lieutenant per shift. This will strengthen the leadership and help to prepare those that are reaching out in their duties for that next level of responsibility. It will afford individuals to grow into these positions or advancement rather than what we've become accustomed to, that trial by fire within our department. An EMA coordinator. Now, we've done research and we've reached out to other similar departments. We found that they utilize, instead of an EMA director, an EMA coordinator position. And what that position acts as is essentially a liaison and also a tool to get all departments prepared within a jurisdiction. What they would do is interact with the EMA director with the county and other surrounding jurisdictions, and they would ensure that the interests and needs of the city are met as well as everyone else's. They would also liaise against, again, between different entities. They would act in a position that would prepare departments and jurisdictions to help build those relationships up so that when it's time to work together, we're able to do so. We're familiar with everybody's process and we're able to do so accordingly. And they would also provide a level of continuity that we have yet to achieve. They would help to bridge that gap between different agencies and departments and even jurisdictions. They would also identify key members or key personnel to fill positions should a unified command or incident command system on a large scale be needed. And they would train those personnel to do the jobs or fill those roles accordingly and when that need arises. And then on the back end, they would ensure that FEMA reports are properly filled out, that they are properly completed with the governmental requirements. And they would ensure that all applicable reimbursements are seized, because we know that is an important need for all jurisdictions. Next, the training officer, why it is important for us. Most departments have training divisions. So the training division generally tracks professional development of the personnel in the department. They're responsible for identifying deficiencies in training to ensure that all are completing the yearly requirements that we have so that we can maintain our certifications, but also identifying areas where we may need improvement and then doing focused or targeted training for those areas. Also, they would be responsible for training on those rare, low frequency, high hazard events. An instance of that would be the logistic fire that we had last year. So training on specific targeted areas like that would be a big benefit to our department and this community. Additional inspector or educator position. Fire and life safety educators are essential to community risk reduction. This position would serve a twofold role. They would be able to assist with the annual inspections that are necessary each year, but also they would have a primary responsibility of assisting or of educating the public. Now, what these educational duties include are lesson plans for those at high risk. Think about early childhood development or even our seniors in our community. They would assist to make sure that they're considering the risk that they face, that they are prepared for the risks that they face, and that they know how to minimize the dangers that surround them. Our entire community is in need of community risk reduction and this level of prevention outreach. And so we are confident that this will be a big benefit to our community. And also it's worth mentioning that the area of fire prevention and community risk reduction is highly graded by ISO. So any advancements that we make in that area are not going to be in vain, but they will go to keeping the ISO rating. Now, along with that are the ISO considerations. I'm sure we're all aware of the importance of that classification. Per our last grading, we were at a risk of losing that ISO class 1, and that was twofold. The lowest scores that we had were our water supply and our personnel. The water supply, as we know, we can inform and we can work with Joint Water and Sewer to try to mitigate some of those. But the most actionable and reasonable course to take to maintain our ISO rating now and keep it in the future is by staffing our department and increasing our staff, because anything that we make up in the staffing area will more than offset anything we're deficient in the water supply at this time, because of the way the scores were. That will be a complete offset. So these the proposed organizational structure and career track that we have we plan to implement, we hope to implement, will establish a solid foundation for this department moving forward. It's scalable, it works now, and it will work as we grow and as the community grows. It will aid in reducing burnout, which comes when we are at critically low staffing levels, which we have been for some time. It will give every employee a clear and obtainable goal for professional development, which will in turn give them a reason to improve and grow within our department and within the city. Therefore, it will aid in employee retention, which we know is very important to our future. We believe that this is a key step in the direction of a better and more prepared Brunswick Fire Department. And we believe that these changes will help us to reach that point where we have a department that the citizens and the city is proud to call its own. You will notice the two main pieces of information are, again, the proposed additions, as well as a structure chart, which implements where or indicates where those positions will be utilized. So for your consideration, we hope that you will approve this.
I want to start out by saying thank you for the work of yourself, Interim Chief Cargile, and City Manager McDuffie and others who've worked to modernize our fire department and try and find ways to create not only more safety, not only more contact with the community, but also a growth path for those who call our fire department home and call our city home. And we know that that's a lot of work to do internally. And so I want to say I appreciate that, and having this to be able to see a growth path of somebody when they first come in the door to have several different arenas that they can grow in is really a positive plus for me. So I just want to say thank you for the work, and this lays out, as you said, a progressive plan to help grow our fire department. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, real quick. One of the things that took me back a bit in here is the bullet here about the ISO rating with employees, with staffing, that sort of thing. And in the next part of the sentence with the water supply, the verbiage, we have no control over issues related to water supply. What does that mean?
I would say we have limited control. We can inform Joint Water Sewer of the issues, and as mentioned, we can work in tandem, hopefully to mitigate those issues. But as far as having a water, sewer, or utility company within the city, as other jurisdictions do, we cannot say this needs to be fixed, and we place an order to go fix it and determine how we're going to fix it. It hasn't been a challenge thus far that we haven't been able to mitigate, but it does present a level of uncertainty because, again, there's a portion of that that is not within our realm of jurisdiction to tell them they must do this and how they must do it. Now, we can, again, offer suggestions and offer NFPA approved methods to obtain those, the needs of our jurisdiction. But at the end of the day, that's not our check to sign, essentially.
But is it a water supply issue or is it a maintenance issue?
In some areas, it is a water supply. There's areas, our main shortcoming for water supply, and it's worth mentioning that we've vastly improved from what I've seen the previous scores were. We have improved. And that comes along with the addition of new pipes and things that have transpired between then and now. Unfortunately, there's certain areas of our jurisdiction that still have lower water pressure levels. And that means that some of our hydrants are not up to a certain level. Now we do not have any that are non-functional or, we don't have any that would be considered dry. We're able to use all of our hydrants within our jurisdiction. It's just that we lose points when they're not up to a certain level. There are some things that we can do to mitigate that: water towers, increase water pressure in targeted areas. And we've presented that, and there are plans to make some changes to address the issues that we do face in the water supply. However, it's worth noting that the deficiency that we had in water supply was nowhere near the deficiency we had in staffing.
This is serious. I mean, it's to put this in here that we're having problems, and I don't know if anybody up here is aware of it or not. I'm certainly not, and I've been around longer than anybody else has. We need to get on top of this. We really do. I know we're not here to discuss this, but this caught my attention early on in the dialogue here, and not to be aware of having problems so we can address them is a serious thing. And to put it in here like this is affecting our ISO rating. When I asked a question about our ISO rating and I didn't get this kind of response, so we need some answers about this, where the problems are and who is the stumbling block to the problems.
I would venture to say it may not be necessarily that there's a stumbling block, but maybe a miscommunication.
When you go to a fire and you don't have what you need coming out of that hydrant, that's a stumbling block. Let me tell you, it's serious. It needs to be addressed.
Well, all of our hydrants have been tested. They are functional and they are operational. We can operate a fire scene with all of our hydrants. Again, the ISO has certain marks that you have to hit for certain levels. And some we were deficient in some specific areas, others we were great. And again, I think it's worth noting that the reason that that's worded that way is to mention that while we can work towards a better ISO rating in that area, the staffing level is really the most actionable item we can to secure that ISO rating, pretty much lock it in because of the deficiency. Again, how low we were in those scores versus how low we were in the water scores. We should be able to lock in and secure our ISO rating with these changes.
Well, surely we've got dialogue with the joint water sewer to take care of any issue that they've got down there.
Right.
I mean, you know what the agreement between the city and the county is, I'm sure, and part of it is to take care of fire hydrants. The other part is to take care of the infrastructure. So, I mean, what's not getting done?
Well, at this point in time, we've identified the ISO rating system has helped us to identify the need for additional changes and additional dialogue, like you mentioned. That's something that we're pursuing. We're actively pursuing. There is no way to set a time frame on when those actions will be implemented. or changes or improvements. And we have to make changes before 1 year from our ISO scale rating in order to maintain our ISO 1 rating. So that's why we present this, not just why we present this, it's an additional reason we present this, in addition to the vast improvements that it makes to our department and our community.
If I may ask, how long have you been with us?
I've lived in this community for 3 years. I've been with the Brunswick Fire Department for approximately 4 months. Before that, I was with the county. Before that, I was with Brunswick Fire Department for about a year. So I've been in the fire service for 12 years, but I've been in this community for 3.
Right. Thank you a lot. Thanks.
You have to have a plan to identify what needs to be
Absolutely.
corrected. And so for me, when I looked at this information, it's a corrective, actionable plan.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you can't correct something if you don't know something's wrong.
That's right.
So now you're identifying for us in this plan what's wrong, what needs to be done, what needs to be worked on. So for me, I love the plan. I especially love the growth and development part of it. And as the chairperson of the land bank, my question is, now that you have a structured plan for growth and development, what are your incentives that you are implementing or offering as far as your staffing and the retention of your staffing? Any additional incentives? I ask that because we are working out and trying to work on the incentive of housing for employees, and to have that as an incentive for retention of, for attraction and retention of employees within the city. And so is that something that you're incorporating in this plan? And if so, you need to come to the land bank meeting so we can converse and see how we work together to make that happen.
I think incentives are important. I know that most of us choose our occupation or choose our place of employment based on what it does for us. And we want to get to that point with the fire service. I think previously the fire service has been viewed as a utilitarian department to work for. I think that there's a more business side to it that we need to approach it from a business standpoint. So certainly incentivizing different incentives, I think, are needed. And, that's definitely something that we'll explore, and working with you, I'm sure we could figure out some good options.
Come on out the box.
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, can you update the commission on the new hires and what our our staffing levels are right now?
Yeah, and as part of that, can you let us know of these new positions of our current firefighters and people in the fire department, how many might be promoted as part of the full organizational chart?
Before you do that, I wasn't through with this thing with the water supply quite. I just want to be sure that you've got an established line down at the joint water sewer to take care of this thing expeditiously.
We have a pretty.
Whatever it is, it's affecting our ISO rating, or us being sure that
Correct.
there's water, the hydrant, whatever it is, you've got that channel.
We do. We have a good relationship with several members of the joint water sewer. Timothy Ransom is one that comes to mind. And we have other individuals that we work with closely with our DRT committee. They are members. We're all there together. So there is a channel open. That conversation is being had. So,
I would like to have a follow-up with this with more specifics is what I would like.
I was just about to say that I will meet with joint water and sewer and provide some clarity on this issue, because I think it needs to be verified in terms of what the needs are, what's being provided, and what can be done, to rectify whatever deficiencies there may exist. So we will have some information going forward on that.
In every transition, you lose something. And this happens to be something that I have been involved with for a long, long time. And when this thing, it jumped out, it really did. I know that you cannot pull up to a fire hydrant and not know that it's going. And one thing that flashed back to me is how much maintenance we as a Brunswick Fire Department are doing. And I'd like to know about that also when I see this.
Sure.
It really, puts that button up there for me. When are we servicing these hydrants and doing our part of it? So I don't know if the records are down there or not, but it's an easy fix with automation we've got today to get that stuff automated and be able to pull the reports and see who's doing what and who's not doing what.
Correct.
And I appreciate that so much to get on that.
Absolutely.
That is a deficiency. It really is and needs to be addressed.
With our current staffing levels, we have a total of 45 approved positions. I believe that we are at, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, so we currently have 7 positions that can be hired. That would be 1 inspector, and then the rest of those will be firefighter personnel. So we do have interest within the department to fill not just the 1 inspector position, but both of those. We do have some strong candidates for that, for our community risk reduction aspect. And then additionally, from there, we will be hiring and upstaffing the rest of our firefighter personnel.
And I would like to address Jason on the water issue. I've been here for 5 years, and for 5 years, I've been involved with joint water and sewer. It all started when Logistic Fire happened. We didn't have the water pressure for the fire on the south end of town. Met with joint water and sewer. There's nothing they can do because they won't put a tower down there. Logistic has started negotiations with joint water and sewer to do a partnership to put a tower down there. But that's probably years in the making. The ISO deficiency is 3 parts. Fire department, water department, and communications. Of that 100%, 40% is water. If you have a deficiency in water, that's a big portion of your score. The fire department tests hydrants every year. We have records that we can provide for you anytime you want to look at them. The water department does the maintenance on the hydrants. It's not the maintenance of the hydrants that's the problem. It's the water pressure and the water supply.
The flow and the pressure.
The flow of water. The ISO gives us a list of hydrants to go out and test. When we go out into the areas to test those hydrants, if they don't meet their requirements, then we get deemed on it as far as ISO. Right now, the areas that are in question is the area of the port. To go a little further, King and Prince has started expansion. They are at their limit for expansion on the south end of town. They can't build another square foot because they can't. They haven't yet. They have yet to get the water supply that they need for the expansion. They've added a fire pump to try to boost that pressure. So they're in the process of trying to get that done.
Well, this is valuable information.
The other thing is with water, the other area that's in question is Liberty Park. It has some issues, probably because of the time frame that it's been set in there. And some of those areas are low water pressure. There's not a whole lot we can do about that area except for boost that water pressure by adding a pump or either adding a tower. Neither one is something that the city can do. It would have to come from joint water. The other area is what's the well there at the bottom of the bridge. Big Jerry Brown building. That area there has several hydrants in that yard. And all of those hydrants are part of that ISO study. And they do not meet requirements. And mainly it's because of maintenance issues. The problem with that area and Liberty Park
and logistic is all of those hydrants are private hydrants, meaning they don't belong to joint water and sewer. They don't belong to the city of Brunswick. They belong to the owners. The Port Authority, Mr. Brown, and whoever is in charge of Liberty Harbor. That's who owns the hydrants. So that's the issue with the water. We're at 97.8% of 100% for ISO. 100%, anything over 90 will give us an improvement. We're 2.2 points away from an ISO 1. So we're back, we could fall back to a 2 if we don't do something. The biggest increase that we could possibly get for the whole ISO rating is for personnel. They will give you a maximum points of 15 points for personnel. And I don't know if y'all are aware or not. Yeah, but we have been drastically understaffed for the 5 years I've been here.
We're pretty aware.
And if we can increase those are something that the city can do quickly. And we are doing that. We've hired 7 or either 8 in the last 2 months since me and Cargiles got here. So basically we're doing that. But if we can increase those numbers, that's the quickest way to get that 2.2 points. And it's something that we can do immediately to retain that class 1. The way the ISO works is we'll retain the class 1 until next year. If we don't correct the problem, then we'll fall to a class 2.
Well, let's get it corrected.
Yes, sir. We're working.
Get you organized here. Thank you so much for that.
So it's worth noting that if I'm not mistaken, they can increase the pressure, but because it's more of an on-demand.
Yes, a fire pump won't give you the credit. And that was one of the options that we discussed with joint water and sewer. That we've had several meetings with joint water and sewer about increasing the pressure on the south end since the fire. But fire pumps will not give you credit for ISO. The other factor with ISO is sprinkled buildings. And because that big building of Mr. Brown's is not sprinkled, then we get dinged because that's a huge that is unprotected, basically.
And y'all are in confabulation with the Port Authority about that, I'm sure.
Yes, sir. I work with the Port Authority every day. I'm deputized through the state for the Port Authority since the fire, so we're in constant communication with the port.
It's very informative. I'm glad we're doing this because I had no idea. I really didn't.
Yes, sir.
And I don't guess anybody else up there did either. So.
Didn't we have some directives that were given to Logistec after their second fire?
We did.
And how often do y'all check on that,
Well,
especially as we're coming into the hot summer months?
Well, one thing that was done after the second fire is we got the state involved more heavily, the state fire marshal's office. And the state fire marshal actually appointed me as one of their deputy fire marshals for this area for the port.
Okay.
So now we can actually be a liaison through the state, and we monitor them on a regular basis. Anytime they have any temperature change now in the pellets themselves, the
alarm
plant manager has to notify me, and then he lets us know what the levels are increasing. Once it gets to a specific level, we can either decide to send a truck down there, or either he has to have the material removed from the building. One of the things they've done, another thing they've done is they've decreased the amount of piles that they have and the size of them.
Yeah.
So we've done several things to try to mitigate that problem.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward with all that.
Yes, sir.
That helped. It really did.
Yes, sir. Well, my assistant chief's a lot more comfortable.
Thank you both.
Well, I want to keep us moving. Any additional comments or questions before we open for a motion? Hearing none, we'll open for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the reorganization of the Brunswick Fire Department as has been presented.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will now have consider approval of reorganization of Brunswick Police Department. Chief Jones. Good to see you, Chief.
Too, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Coming to you this evening to ask your consideration for approval of a organizational chart change for our department. And that is the addition of a assistant chief position being added. There is no additional cost. We already have funding in our budget for that. Just a little background on it. What this does is it helps facilitate a reorganization of our department by adding direct supervision over our support services division, investigative division, and gives us additional benefits of helping to fill vacancies as far as recruiting, to also get our gang investigator spot, which we just filled, position, and our drug squad back up and running. So basically what this does is it puts somebody directly responsible for hiring and retention of officers. That's something that's been a big issue with our department over the years. One big change is the increases that you approved for first responders earlier this year. We lost 26 officers last year who retired, went to other agencies, were unable to complete the training process. This year, we've only lost 11. So those pay increases make a difference. What you did earlier this year makes a difference. So that's more than half or less than half that we've lost this year compared to last year. So overall, right now, we have just an update like Ms. McDuffie requested. A fire department, we have 39 sworn. We've graduated 9 from the academy this year so far. We have 8 in the academy right now. So by first of next year, we're looking to be in a lot better shape than we have than last year.
Chief, I can't say thank you enough. I know a lot of it is, some of it is what we did, but a lot of it is what you do. And what you've done in connection with not only City Manager McDuffie, but all of those, your assistant chief, Officer Bew and others, recruiting, focusing on retention, making sure we're keeping people in-house. So thank you, and thank your officers as well. I want to say a big thank you and a big appreciate your time talking to me one-on-one, but what I heard in this plan too is jumping back into that drug task force and opening that up, training someone to be in that position. I know we had conversations about the bike and gang task force as well. I know that's a big part of your heart, the biking and being visible. So I know we want to keep working on that towards that first quarter of the year, but also I just love the thought of making sure we're getting our task force back out there and really focused in specific areas. So that's a big part of a plus of this plan for me. And thank you for the work that you put into it. Questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll open.
I got one question. I apologize for being a little slow. Who is, this is for the city manager, our city manager, who is directly responsible for the hiring of a police officer? The Human Resources Department or the Police Department?
The police department, the human resources provides support, and she also helps with assessments. But the police department basically has a full, I guess, evaluation of new hires.
The going out and advertising and the actually recruitment, that is for the police department to be doing?
We have a recruitment person in the police department that has been working on recruiting. Of course, any time they go out for career fairs and other activities, HR does support them. And we do have HR working with them on, the planning and that kind of thing. So, and the marketing. So that it's working in conjunction with the police department. The police department does have some direct responsibility.
But what I'm trying to get to subtly is who is responsible for the actual going out, the advertising, who would go to a job fair? Would it be human resources or would it be the police department?
Police department is, they work to go out to the job fairs, but again, we just had, I mean, previously, we only had one person in HR. So that person was not doing that, but now the person that we have a second person. So the HR manager has been working very closely with the police department, and any outreach that they've done, she's actually supported that. But the police department have been the one, because they can talk directly to people about the job and the job environment and what the job entails. So, you know, it's very important for them to have that presence versus HR. Basically, what she is support staff and make sure that they're providing the right information, that they have information about generalities for the city and that kind of thing.
But they don't advertise for their police in paper, say, are you running ads in the paper?
HR does.
Okay, all right, so. We need to, I'm just where I'm coming from, I am really a person that believes in central services. I really do. Police department, they put people in jail and be sure that people are staying straight so you don't have to put them in jail. Fire departments fight fires and they do the things that we were just explained to. Human resources as a central service could perhaps do a little bit more to take some of the burden off of the police and the fire department right now.
She has, I mean,
That's-
our manager now.
I look through, let me say something, Regina, I look through this and it's just not clear. That's where I'm coming from too. It's just not clear.
Well, this recruitment plan was put together by the police department, and I asked them to do it because they have to have direction of where they're going with their recruitment. And I think, you know, they have to provide the expertise in that area. Of course, any general recruitment such as marketing, such as putting it in the paper, such as putting it on the website, such as developing job descriptions, that's what HR does in support.
I'd like to talk some more away from this meeting about this.
Any additional comments or questions?
Yes, I'd just like to add that Officer Bue, she's always present at community events about hiring of the police department. She's at job fairs. She's like all over. We have the billboard that's up. It's on the social media for the city. It's on the social media for the police department. I don't read the paper. Millennials don't read the paper, so I wouldn't even know if it's in there, but the people that are hiring age, we're driving, which makes the billboard, and we're on social media. So, I mean, we see it. So I just wanted to add that, like, it's out there. So I just wanted to,
She's done
My
an
take on it.
outstanding job. She did actually doing two jobs right now, community services and recruitment.
But I think it should be a partnership.
Ma'am?
It should be a partnership. It
Yes,
should be a meshing together of the human resource department as well as the police department's recruiter. Because they can bring that intricate knowledge and mesh it with I don't expect HR to know, she may have some generalities of what a police does, but she's not in that job doing that job. So she can't transfer that passion and that knowledge that a police officer can transfer to a recruit, a potential recruit. She can't make me feel what Ms. Bue can make me feel and understand, because she's there doing that job on a daily basis. So for her to be able to connect with me and transfer the knowledge, the skills, and the passion that she has, the why she does what she does, even if the pay ain't quite where she wants it to be, she can still transfer that to me and transfer that to a recruit. So it should be a partnership. That's from my seat.
Wonderful. Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the reorganization of the Brunswick Police Department as presented.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. We'll now move on to city attorneys items. Consider approval of local option sales tax intergovernmental agreement between Glenn County and the city of Brunswick.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As you are all aware, the city and county have been working earlier this year. They were tasked with working earlier this year to renegotiate the local option sales tax agreement that has been in place since 2012 between the city and the county. Just to give a bit of background, the city and county, under that previous agreement, had agreed to certain percentages based on the county providing recreational services, animal control services, and traffic control maintenance. City and county submitted to the required renegotiation procedures, sent out the appropriate notices, had the meetings together, and ultimately what you have before you is the new, the version of the lost intergovernmental agreement between Glenn County and the city of Brunswick. As you can see therein, there are still going to be two services remaining that will be the responsibility of the county within the city limits of the city of Brunswick. That is traffic signal maintenance and animal services. The new term of this agreement, should it be approved by the city commission, be January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2032. As you know, it coincides with the census, and as it's produced, that's the kind of the triggering mechanism to requiring cities and counties to renegotiating these agreements. You know, something important to keep in mind, as always, this is a living and breathing creature. This is an agreement that can be amended at any given time during the course of the agreement. But as it's written now, and if it's approved by the city, and then the county will be taking it up tomorrow night at their regularly scheduled commission meeting, it will be for a term of 10 years, again, January 1st of next year until December 31st, 2032. With regards to the services that are provided therein, nothing substantive changes regarding animal services being provided in traffic signal maintenance. However, there are some things that I think the city and the county both agreed upon putting in there that was not previously in the 2012 agreement. And those primarily resulted from the ability to track how these services are being rendered over the course of the agreement. So if you do, as you look through the agreement, you'll see that section 2 essentially remain the same, traffic signal maintenance. That's from the previously agreed upon 2012 agreement. Section 3, animal services, those services remain substantively similar to what was provided under the 2012 agreement. There is language that's obviously been removed from that previous agreement regarding the transition of services, because if you recall in 2012, that was the first time these services were going to be provided in the scope of this lost agreement.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
about those? Okay, like for instance, with the animal services, was there anything different that is in this agreement that wasn't before to cover the situation where when a citizen calls animal control and then animal control, the county says, oh, well, you need to call the city?
So that was part of the discussion. I mean, animal services are different than what you would expect as like if police services were being provided within the city, where police services are obviously on-call services. You dial 911, police, fire, they're going to be present at any given time, 24 hours during the day, 7 days a week. Animal services, the way that the agreement is structured is that the county will provide the same level of services within the city as it does in the county. That is to say that animal services in the county are not the same as a law enforcement service or a first responder service. It's not a 24-hour call on call.
7 days.
Right.
Right. It's a 5-day, 8 until, I believe it's 8 until 4 o'clock, Monday through Friday.
Oh, let me re-ask my question then.
Sure. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I appreciate that information. If it's an emergency and it's after hours.
Right.
Does the animal control services automatically, is there a message that's recorded that says if it's a dangerous dog or a dangerous animal situation,
there is a provision in this agreement whereby if there is that type of situation between the hours of 5 PM through 8 AM on weekends or, otherwise off hours, if there's a call that comes in, county animal services, and this is the same level of service again in the county, they use reasonable efforts to respond to calls related, and those calls most often come in through, of course, the police department if it's dealing with a dangerous or vicious animal, an attack or something along those lines. So that there is a component in this agreement that addresses that. And part of that is going to be that there's still, we both have, the county and the city both have nearly identical vicious dog. It was a state requirement many years ago to adopt new ordinances that addressed vicious dogs and how that procedure will go through. So there is going to be a component that will address that type of emergent situation.
And who calls whom and how it's directed.
Right.
Okay.
Because what you're asking about is an emergency on-call personnel. Is that what you're talking about, Commissioner?
Yeah, and just I guess the chain of how it works. If you had a dangerous dog and you call animal control, you get referred to the county police, but then the county police says, oh, well, you need to call the city because you're in the city. And that's not the way it should work.
So it should be a more direct
Yes.
person to contact.
The county, it seems like the county
jurisdictions.
should call the city directly. The county police should call the city police.
I think it's most often that the city police are consulted first if there's a vicious emergent situation within the city related to a dangerous dog. I think some people might look
Okay.
up and call animal control
They're gonna
services
just
first,
call-
but there's not gonna be that. So I think it might need
Yeah.
to be more of like us making a determination and having a discussion amongst the agencies to see how that can be practically applied, whether it's if there's an animal control call that comes in after hours or on the weekends, is there some, even if it's just like a voice recording saying, if this is an emergency, please call, and they can direct them straight to county personnel who is in charge of handling the vicious or dangerous dog, that whoever is designated, because the city and the county both have to have a designated dangerous or vicious dog officer. That is by ordinance, that's by the state law, that's what's required. But because the state law, when it was amended to address that, the previous loss agreement, which we're still governed by, was in place. And so that the counties and cities ordinances were done around the same time. The city's ordinance references the fact that the
Okay.
county would be designated, their county dangerous or vicious dog officer would be the same as the cities.
Okay.
So that might just be more of like a practical
Mhm.
discussion to make sure everybody's on the same page between, I'm sure the city manager and I can get with, the appropriate parties at the county to say, let's make sure that's all, on the same
Right.
page.
But it doesn't look, I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, so our ordinances do align well with the county's
That is
ordinances.
correct.
Okay.
And I do believe, I don't want to misspeak, but I think that the previous agreement, there actually wasn't animal services on Thursdays back in 2012, anywhere in the county. That was just the day that they were closed. That has changed. Now it's Monday through Friday. And so that would be referenced in the same and mirrored in here.
And then as far as the traffic control lights, I think there was reference to reporting on a regular basis to the city from the county. Was that actually done, and was it helpful, and is it still being done?
I think that's going to be something that we're going to try to look to do better on, and all parties involved. That brings me to section 5, which is the audit provisions. That is an entirely new section in the agreement. If you look there, it's on page 11. This specifically is clearly identified to try to better help provide data points in the future for whoever is in charge and whoever's going to sit down at the table to renegotiate loss in 2031. The county there's a mutual agreement of maintaining records. There's a periodic monitoring meeting where the city and county will get together to review, analyze, discuss the level and cost of services provided in sections 2 and 3, meaning animal control and or animal services and traffic control maintenance. Either party can request at any time to have one of these periodic monitoring meetings. And then there just requires an additional sort of level of record keeping so that we can again, I think this is looking to the future. This is 2031 to say, all right, have we complied? Let's get these auditing provisions out and let's see where the numbers really fall. So with all of that said, I think the most important thing to note, of course, is the percentages of how this is broken down. There's no tiers. This is a pure 10-year set rate, 27% to the city of Brunswick, and 73 to Glenn County. That is, again, going to be in the identical language you see tonight will be considered by the county at their meeting on Thursday night. The last thing I would point out is obviously there is a service removed here as was provided in 2012, recreational services. If you take a look at page 2, there's a footnote under there that this agreement doesn't contemplate the continuation of recreational services because that is what was discussed amongst the parties. At present, the Glenn County will cease providing recreational services January 1st, 2023, or at a date that is agreed upon by the parties. So I think it's going to be incumbent on the city manager, myself, to get with the county. It is an understanding that we are going to help provide a transition of those services as they move from the county back into the city. I think everybody's on board with that and understands that that is the process that we're going to go with.
We have until September of 23 to get it done. Did I see that somewhere? I wasn't in the meeting, but seems like I have picked that up somewhere.
That was a placeholder date. At one point, we removed it to try to put some flexibility on as whether or not we want to bring it in faster or how we want to do it. But it's just at this point, a mutual agreed upon in writing, city and county, we will make an independent determination of that date and then come to an agreement on it. Brought it to a vote. I'm sure we'll be bringing it to the vote by the city and by the county and move that forward.
And one quick question on signal lights, timing or any changing to the timing of lights. Is that considered maintenance that the county would do or?
I do not know,
Okay.
honestly.
Because some of the timing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not sure.
Okay, because I've
Most
noticed
of-
the
most of-
timing of some of the lights on Gloucester are different now since they've been doing the paving.
Those are controlled obviously by the Department of Transportation. And I think they have been altering those because we've been doing the work at night.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see that.
Okay.
Most
I can obviously-
of the calls are done on an exception basis.
Thank
when
you.
Have a troubleshooting. That's when most of it's done. The state does Highway 17, state roads.
Right. I'd say that's correct. Yep.
Just a quick question. When we put in pedestrian signals, that doesn't count as traffic signals.
Yeah, it does.
It
It's
does.
listed in there.
So if the pedestrian I guess I'm asking because we're already in an agreement where they handle traffic signals, yet the pedestrian signal across from Mary Ross Park hasn't been fixed because I thought we were fixing that.
No, well, that's a county, although it's on a state route, it is a city.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying.
we
They
are
told me that wasn't.
responsible for it, but the county is responsible for that aspect of traffic signal maintenance as well. And there have been, they were given the go-ahead. There was a part that they were waiting on. I think part of it works, but some of it don't. But Gero checked into that just this week.
So it would, just so I'm thinking, even though it's on a DOT road, it's our signal. But the county does the maintenance?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to.
And I do need to clarify.
State did.
I was gonna say, I actually do need to clarify that a little bit. You can see exhibit A of this agreement actually has the Excel spreadsheet, and it breaks down the traffic maintenance of like what DOT maintains for the city. I shouldn't say for in the sense of like them doing it as a service. They are maintaining their own signals. That's correct. And then
Because I thought when we were in a meeting and we were talking about something along 341 of Bay Street, and they were talking about that DOT maintained and did the maintenance and all were responsible for all of that stuff. They put it in and they were responsible for it. I thought that's what in a meeting we had. I thought that's what was brought out in that meeting. I forget that joint meeting we had. We were talking about something, but it was dealing with that area.
So if you.
Well, I
think-
got a call the other day and to check that status of that crossing. And I spoke directly because I was thinking that it was a state maintained crossing. But I spoke directly to Darrell and he said, no, the city has responsibility of those designated crossings on Bay Street.
Right, and
Which
there are
is-
certain pedestrian crossings even on.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's too convoluted almost, but
Yeah, it's listed.
so if the city wanted to maintain a historically looking crosswalk, for example, in Gloucester where we have the bricks, the city would tend to maintain those. So if you want anything above and beyond what's normal,
You're gonna be responsible.
yeah, I mean, unless you just want it spray painted.
Mhm.
But if you look at Exhibit A, there's a full breakdown as the DOT maintained for city of Brunswick maintained, which would then fall within the lost, under the lost agreement. And that's how that's broken down in there. And then the final exhibit is B is the certificate of distribution. And if the, and you'll see there Brunswick 27%, Glenn County 73%. Mayor, you would be signing that if it is approved tonight and approved by the county tomorrow night.
I am happy with the agreement that's before me, so I don't want this to be any kind of dissension, but I do want to, if at all possible, in the 45-day kind of update that they're going to give us from, these are the signals that have been worked on X, Y, and Z. They're inside of that. They're also going to say, here's how long it took us to respond to this issue. The reason I asked that is because I know those signals across from Mary Ross Park have been out for months for sure. And then the other signal that I think about of important is the signal on Parkwood. And the one on Parkwood has also been out a fairly long time, and we continue to have issues with that crossing. So I just didn't know if it's not in here, it'll just be on the due diligence of us to stay on them, but I'm just wondering.
I mean, I would certainly consider that to be the data points that are, contemplated in those new auditing provisions, just to say, I think all these records will be hopefully compiled during those periodic meetings. And I would assume that there's some paper trail that where the city's initiated the call for the repair, and then we can see how that time period.
As you say, that your data should tell you that. You know the date that you placed the call, you know the date that the
It was
action has been
fixed.
taken.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that should be a given within the data that you have.
Perfect. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the local option sales tax intergovernmental agreement between Glenn County and the city of Brunswick as presented.
Hearing the first, do we have a second?
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Now we'll move on to consider for discussion and approval, resolution 2022-10, imposing a moratorium on the establishment, expansion, or development of a homeless shelter where one is not currently operated.
That's correct. This was a directive, I think, from the commission to my office to see if we could put something together in terms of addressing planning and zoning and how we look to see potential new services and shelters being provided to address what has obviously been discussed tonight as issues within the city related to homelessness. I know we also have the summit tomorrow. Everybody I expect to be there to discuss a lot of these issues. And I do, as I stated, when we put forth the urban camping ordinance, again, I don't believe this to be a punitive measure. Is a measure that I think the city needs to take in order to address so that there are not knee-jerk reactions in how we move this thing forward. Part of, what I've heard is this is an outright ban. How can this ever happen? How can we provide services? But I think this is going to give us an opportunity. I've been working with John. John's putting forth some good ideas as to how we can put forth an ordinance that, not is a ban, but addresses the ability to place proper zoning and have areas where shelters with full services can be located within the city. So that is the extent of the moratorium. There is a couple subject to, there was some data that I wasn't able to obtain prior to tonight. I think I can get it from Chief of Police relatively quick. It would be located in the third whereas clause. I also didn't know if we were going to have this year, so I'll get the up-to-date numbers as to the calls being placed to the city police department. And the ordinance, or excuse me, the moratorium places definitions. I don't think anything that was just discussed tonight with hand in hand, I don't consider that to be a shelter. These are only for, you know, the currently located services within the city. And for 180 days, while we try to work on an ordinance to bring to you guys, that there's not a new application expansion or development of a new shelter. So it's limited to 180 days. I think that would give ample opportunity for myself to draft an ordinance. I have to work closely with John. He's extremely responsive in trying to get this done. I think we both know the importance of what this could mean and how we address the issues moving forward. I think that's essentially all that I would have to present as to this particular matter.
Where did we leave off with addiction recovery or mental issues?
I personally would not advise putting something like that within this
Okay.
report.
So we might have to depend more on the number of unrelated residents in a single family dwelling.
Well, there are, to the extent, I would split those two items up, because there's already state laws that govern rehabilitation services and what types of planning you would need to go through to approve a new rehabilitation facility. The boarding, there's already planning and zoning ordinances that help, I think, John and anyone coming to apply to the city. There's already things in place that would, I don't want to say prohibit, but would regulate the areas in which those were located.
Okay.
So I think right now, and I do think there's a little bit of a void in our ordinances related to what this is addressing.
Okay.
Where I think the state law and I think our current ordinances address those two things.
Okay.
I know if you recall, there was I don't know how many, it could be 3 years ago at this point, I'm not sure, but the old hospital downtown ordinances that were in place at that time would have required a conditional use. So we do have ordinances in place that address those types of situations.
Thank you.
Because what we need to understand is that there, like the well is transitional. So when you're talking about hand in hand, you're talking about permanent housing.
Right.
When you're talking about the well and other places as such, you're talking about transitional services that's being provided to people. So there's a big difference between somebody having a permanent home versus somebody just being transitional. And I think that's probably where most of the problem usually comes in at, is that in the transitional area, not those that may have a permanent home, because people at levels of seeking permanency in their life, and some people are just transitional and you're not going to be able to change that.
Right. And I think in an effort to, I mean, you have to think of this both ways. Our current ordinances prohibit the overnight services. That is clearly going to be a need at some point in time. So if there is something we can address through an ordinance, it's just going to need to be, we have to situate everything within the city and to the best services, best location, where it can be best provided with all things. I mean, currently our ordinances prohibit the overnight. That is part of what the issues we were trying to address with urban camping. Now we need to try to address if there's the ability to have an overnight shelter and place proper zoning, proper regulations on that, then that's something we need to look into.
Okay.
Brian, this is saying that no new shelter, is that correct?
Where one does not currently exist or operate.
So how about if you do exist, what do you do then?
Well, you still have ordinances.
Continue to operate.
Where you are?
Yes.
Are you going to preclude any moving or?
Yes, I mean, it prohibits at the moment, it would prohibit the establishment, expansion and or development of a homeless shelter at a site on which a shelter does not presently exist.
So you're saying if you're doing it right now, you're going to be there until?
Yes.
Yeah.
Similar to any grandfathering clause, essentially we have in our ordinances.
But if an existing shelter, existing shelter were to change their level of service,
I mean, I would
they,
think,
would they have to come before the commission? If that level of service was not a permitted use?
yeah, I mean, they would, I think, regardless. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the currently operating service providers in the city are doing so within the authority that's been provided by the
Right.
commission already.
Okay,
Or that's been provided by the ordinances as they're currently written.
okay.
I mean, I have this question. I guess I have it, and I learned it even when we were contemplating matters of the alcohol licenses. Why are we having to shoulder and burden all of the excessive enforcement actions and not holding the establishments responsible for shouldering the cost of these additional issues that we are encountering? I don't think it's fair that the additional cost should be burdened by the city. And I don't think that it's fair that the additional needed enforcement actions and the cost of those actions should be burdened by the police department. This was something that, even though it's in a voluntary mode, this is something that persons that open the shelters and open these facilities have the knowledge of, or they're supposed to be, or they're supposed to have that knowledge of the potential of these things happening. And so in your planning for these things and planning to go into this area, you should be accounting for any potential issues or matters that's going to come from this. And so, but everything happened, you go and you start this, and then now everything falls on the city. And everybody's expecting the city to be the remedy and to remedy those matters when we weren't initially included on the conversation when you decided to start the business or to
Not on
take
that
this
payroll.
action. But now on the backside of it, it's where's the city and how is the city going to help do this? We should do our part, but we should be included on the initial planning of this. Long segment said, we should, for me, include in all of this stuff that we're doing, that it is the responsibility of that facility to provide additional security and not be so reliant on the police department.
Nuisance,
You can quote me on that.
yeah. It's considered a nuisance property, which.
I'll refrain.
Mhm.
I want to say, while this reads as a moratorium, what it honestly, I think sits at is more of a reset where we can take our time, figure out how to do this right. Let it not be kind of hodgepodge and jumping from one guest to another guest, but sit down with every single person at the table to try and come up with a global plan that hopefully includes the county and the city. Thank you for the work that's done on this. Any other questions or concerns before we open it up for a motion?
I just use an example and then we can move on forward. I use the example for what I just said and put it into context of what I just said. Just like with housing, housing has its matters that it has to deal with. And so housing partners with the Brunswick Police Department, and they pay the Brunswick Police Department for the coverage that the Brunswick Police Department does at housing. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, I think-
Schools also have their own police department, but they didn't always have their own police department. That has been necessitated, and perhaps this is necessitated.
Yeah.
And if approved, I mean, we'll work, John told me the other day that he needed some more work. He had some time on his hands still.
His voice has gotten stronger too.
Something I don't understand is.
But I do think we'll be able to put together an appropriate.
The totality of a certificate of need from the state. I really don't. Most health providers have to go apply and be accredited to get a certificate of need. Why wouldn't we be taking this to the legislation to that point, the way this is just masked out? I mean, you do it, you're in the sunny South, and it's gonna happen wherever you go. I mean, it's just going to today. It's not gonna get any better until it's the whole picture like we're getting at today is addressed in a certificate of need. And to my estimation, has got to be part of the process. You can't just go open the door, start a 501c3 and open the door with the 501c3. You should have a certificate of need from the state. So.
And I think all of those are good points that I think over the 180 days that we can dig into and find out to come to finite answers. Any comments before we move to a motion? We'll open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 2022-10, which is enacting a moratorium on the establishment, expansion, and or development of a homeless shelter at a site on which a shelter does not presently exist.
Could you make it subject to city attorney revisions so that I can make the revisions? to where-
Subject to city attorney's revisions as stated.
Here in the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We will now entertain a motion to adjourn for executive session for litigation. Do I
So
hear a motion?
moved.
Second.
First and the second, all those in favor shall by the usual sign of aye. Aye. Hearing none, we are adjourned.
The city, they have to come and solve all of the
All
problems.
the issues.
But they don't talk to
I
the
know.
city before they do this.
We shut down.
We, right, I know. I'm a. When I asked Brian, it was us. We have returned from executive session. No action was taken. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. First and the second, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, same. Hearing none. We are adjourned. Yes, ma'am.